Chapter 41. Boom. The golden divine lightning struck the rock, but the rock didn't show any fear. Instead, it revealed traces of excitement and allowed the divine lightning to strike its body. This divine lightning was indeed the power of the heavenly tribulation. In an instant, the rock that the Sakra couldn't damage no matter how hard he tried was blasted into a large number of small broken stones. The golden lightning covered the boulder, wanting to continue to wreak havoc and destroy the boulder. However, the jade light in the boulder suddenly exploded. It suddenly had infinite power and swallowed all the power of the lightning that covered the boulder's surface. Thump, thump. The sound from the boulder was still the same as before. Moreover, this sound was even stronger than before, as if it had gained strength from the divine lightning just now. Crack. The Rock Ghost King's actions seemed to provoke the heavenly tribulation in the sky. The heavenly tribulation churned violently, and with a loud boom, a bolt of crimson divine lightning that was even larger than the one before struck the Rock Ghost King. A violent explosion occurred, and the surface of the Rock Ghost King was shattered into pieces. It fell to the ground. The boulder's size was even smaller. However, the boulder was incomparably mysterious. It first allowed the divine lightning to destroy the hard boulder on the outside. When the divine lightning completely covered its body, it mysteriously swallowed all the power of the divine lightning in one fell swoop like before. In this way, the heavenly tribulation was no longer as ferocious as before. Here, it was like the boulder's food. It was incomparably mysterious. Anger. The heavenly tribulation was furious. The tribulation cloud that was originally 5-colored suddenly changed into 7-colored tribulation clouds. Bolts of lightning fell like rain. They continuously bombarded the boulder. The boulder's surface was shattered bit by bit. Every time it received a bolt, the boulder's size would shrink. However, the smaller it was, the more intense the jade light emitted by the boulder. The thump, thump, thump sounds became louder and more powerful. It was as if a peerless divine embryo was being nurtured inside. It was about to break out of the boulder. What kind of treasure is inside the boulder? It actually uses the heavenly tribulation to temper itself and absorb the power of the divine lightning. I have never heard of such a thing happening. Amazing, too amazing. At this moment, the mysterious girl's eyes were also wide open. She stared unblinkingly at the development before her. With her experience, she could tell with a single glance that the Rock Ghost King was actually absorbing the power of the lightning to temper himself. Such an action was simply earth-shattering and incomparably shocking. She could guarantee that there was absolutely no one in the world of cultivators who was so unbelievably powerful. He dared to absorb the power of the heavenly tribulation. This also indicated that the chief treasure inside the rock was definitely a rare and unparalleled treasure. Boom, boom, boom. Bolts of lightning fell like rain. Every single one of them was extraordinary. The golden one was the Gangjin Heavenly Thunder, the green one was the Yimu Heavenly Thunder, and the other types of Heavenly Thunder. All of them were extremely powerful thunder tribulations. The power contained within them was enough to injure a nascent soul-stage-old monster severely in an instant. However, these terrifyingly powerful heavenly tribulations were actually unable to shake the boulder in front of them. Instead, it continued to devour the power of the divine thunder. Every time it swallowed one, the strength of the rock would increase by a bit. Crack. The heavenly thunder continued to bombard the boulder for a quarter of an hour. After being unable to do anything to the boulder, the tribulation clouds rolled violently. Suddenly, they gathered together and turned into a purple heavenly thunder. It crossed the boundary of time and space and heavily bombarded the boulder. Boom. The boulder burst out with thousands of rays of jade light. Countless stones fell from the boulder and burst out in all directions. The jade light covered the sky and the earth. At this moment, the entire mountain was completely covered under the light. The jade light spun around, forming a vortex. Like a terrifying mouth, it instantly swallowed the tribulation clouds in the sky. Chief treasure. This is definitely the chief treasure. If I get it, it will be easy for me to take revenge and save Mother White Tiger and the others. The jade light blazed brightly, causing Di Shitian to see a vast expanse of white. He couldn't see anything. He only heard a loud boom and the lightning in the sky stopped. In his heart, how could he not know that this was definitely the birth of the chief treasure? In his mind, all kinds of complicated thoughts were spinning. A desire to grab the mysterious chief treasure in his hand crazily swelled. In his heart, he kept shouting. In an instant, several inches of light shot out from his eyes. Suddenly, the scene in front of him changed. Swoosh! In an instant, the jade light that covered the sky receded like the tide. In the blink of an eye, it was gone. It was as if the shocking jade light just now was all an illusion. Di Shitian wasn't in the mood to think about this. He quickly looked at the boulder where it was originally. When he saw it, his mouth couldn't help but open wide. Could this be the supreme chief treasure that was born in the boulder? In front of him was a rectangular piece of jade. This piece of jade didn't emit any light. It was a complete piece that was as long as a farmer's bench. As a whole, it didn't have a single flaw. It was perfect and flawless. On top of it, the jade light flowed. At a glance, one could tell that this was definitely a rare piece of jade. Although Di Shitian hadn't seen the jade annulus of the He clan, he believed that this piece of jade in front of him was definitely not inferior to the jade annulus of the He clan. Perfect, it was really perfect. This was a jade embryo that was born from heaven and earth. A jade embryo like this was born in the boulder. What kind of treasure is this? Disregarding his own injuries, Sakura quickly stood up and came to the front of this jade embryo. The jade embryo wasn't as mystical as before. It fell to the ground like an ordinary person. Inside, there wasn't any unusual mystical power. It was as if it was really a piece of supreme jade in the secular world. Patter. Di Shitian walked to the jade embryo and placed his tiger claw on it. His eyes were filled with surprise. What a strange feeling. Although he didn't feel any power from the jade stone, he discovered that there seemed to be a mysterious connection between him and the jade embryo. When he placed his tiger claw on the jade embryo, he could faintly feel that the jade embryo was emitting a trace of joyful aura. It was very strange when it reached his heart. This was a feeling that he had never felt before. This jade embryo was born from the boulder. Although I don't know why I didn't feel the power from the boulder, it's definitely not an ordinary jade embryo. In almost an instant, Di Shitian had already decided that this jade embryo might be a rare treasure. Judging from the power of the tribulation, it was definitely not something that an ordinary object could possess. In addition, the mysterious connection between him and the jade embryo made him instantly certain. The jade embryo in front of him was a treasure. A prime treasure. The mysterious girl sighed in confusion. What's going on? This jade embryo is obviously a treasure born from the boulder, but why can't I feel any power from it? It seems to be no different from an ordinary jade. Strange, this is really strange. Could it be that the tribulation failed and the divine embryo was destroyed by the tribulation? Because of the previous jade light, she couldn't see what happened at all. She only saw that the tribulation turned into a bolt of purple divine lightning. The power in that divine lightning was extremely shocking. Just by approaching the edge, she felt like she couldn't withstand it and was about to reveal her original form. That bolt of purple lightning was really too scary. Now that she saw it again, it was just an ordinary piece of jade. She couldn't see anything special about it. She had also used her demon sense to examine it, but there was nothing special about it. Under her investigation, it was just an ordinary piece of jade. He couldn't help but wonder if the divine embryo had been destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. Once this thought appeared, she couldn't help but temporarily dismiss the idea of taking the jade embryo. Most importantly, she didn't want Di Shitian to know about her existence now. Forget it. Anyway, I'm going to follow behind the little black tiger. If there's anything special, I'll know about it sooner or later. If there's really something strange, I'll just take it when the time comes. It's not good for the black tiger to know about my existence now. I still need to rely on him to crack the imperial heavenly treasure box. The mysterious girl murmured and made a decision. After all, she thought that she would be following Di Shitian for this period of time and could observe him. If there were any changes, she could easily deal with it with her abilities. That was why she wasn't in a hurry to take action. This is a treasure. Different from the mysterious girl's thoughts, Sakra's heart was firm. The jade embryo was a treasure. Without thinking too much, he opened his storage bag and put the jade embryo into his bag. After that, he turned around and walked down the mountain. The huge backlash from the rock just now had already caused him great injuries. They were going to migrate tomorrow. Even if he couldn't fully recover from his injuries, he had to stabilize them temporarily today. No one knew what kind of danger they would encounter during the migration. He had to deal with it in his best condition. Raw. He quickly ran down the mountain and passed through the forest. He couldn't delay the migration any longer. The scene of lightning and thunder just now would definitely be seen by many people in the mortal world again. By then, there would probably be a large number of immortal cultivators entering the mountain range in a few days' time. He couldn't rely on luck. The urgency of the migration was even more pressing. Ignoring everything else, he dragged his heavily injured body back to the cave. He took out a soul-gathering pill from his storage bag and swallowed it. Then, he closed his eyes and began to cultivate. He circulated the tiger raw technique and quickly nourished the injured parts of his body and repaired the cracks in his meridians. His injuries this time were too severe. It was impossible for him to fully recover in a day's time. Thus, he could only rely on the effects of the soul-gathering pill to stabilize his injuries. He had to recover at least 50% of his combat strength. Only then could he more or less guarantee his safety during the migration. Chapter 42. His demonic power flowed through his meridians like a river. His meridians were like rivers. His meridians were like parched canals under the scorching sun. As his demonic power flowed through his meridians, it provided the parched earth with the best moisture. The cracks gradually began to heal under this silent nourishment. The power of the Rock Ghost King's counterattack, in addition to the full power of the Rock Ghost King's attack, had all been inflicted on him. Cracks appeared on his meridians, and his internal organs were greatly damaged. This kind of injury was not something that could be healed in a short day. Now, Sakra could only use the medicinal power of the spirit gathering pill to recover his own demonic power, and then slowly nourish the injured areas. He temporarily sealed the matter of the jade embryo in his mind. No matter how miraculous the jade embryo was, that was a matter for the future. Right now, the most pressing matter wasn't the jade embryo, but the migration that was right in front of his eyes. He adjusted his condition and tried his best to be in the best state possible for the upcoming migration. Just as Di Shetien was silently recovering from his injuries, the creatures in Tiger Hill mountain range were in a state of panic. That was because they realized that the kings in the mountain range had actually moved out at the same time. Moreover, it wasn't just one of them. They were moving out to bring the entire tribe out of their original encampment. Within the Monkey Valley, over 1,000 monkeys of various sizes were bouncing and jumping as they left the Monkey Valley. The majority of these monkeys were carrying things in their hands. They were wrapped in animal fur. They were either wrapped in fruits or seeds. There were also many sturdy monkeys carrying large bamboo tubes of varying lengths on their backs. Every single one of them paid special attention to the bamboo tubes. In total, there were hundreds of tubes. There were also many that carried fruit tree saplings. It had to be said that a tribe with a king was often very different from a tribe without one. If it were any other tribe, they definitely wouldn't have made so many preparations before moving. However, the monkey tribe had done so. Under the lead of a golden ape as tall as a human, there were also a few strong wild wolves leading the way. The entire monkey tribe moved out of the Monkey Valley and hurried towards the gathering point designated by Di Shetien. At the same time, a shocking number of vultures suddenly flew out of the Condor Peak. The one at the front was huge. When it spread its wings, it was at least a few meters wide. When it flapped its wings, it stirred up gusts of wind. It was very fast. The cluster of golden feathers on its head was like a golden firework. It was like a phoenix standing in a flock of chickens. It stood out from the masses. It led the group of vultures towards the center of the mountain range. On the ground, poisonous snakes of various sizes and colors crawled out of the mountain streams without any warning. There were so many of them that it made one's scalp tingle. The one at the front was a huge white python that was as thick as a bucket. It slithered quickly on the ground, its perfect scales wriggling constantly. The group of snakes passed by, provoking the various birds and beasts in front of them. One by one, they ran in all directions as if they were rioting. Such a large group of snakes was not something that ordinary animals could contend against. Even an elephant would be swallowed by the group of snakes at this time. Not even its bones would be left. The vultures flew in the sky while the snakes crawled on the ground. They were all heading towards the same place. At the same time, in different areas of the mountain range, the three tribes were all heading towards the same place. Such a scene could be said to be very grand. Wherever they passed, all kinds of animals would disappear. With the king's speed, it would not take long for them to reach their destination. However, the ordinary clansmen did not have that kind of speed. Therefore, they would set off as soon as the sky turned dark. That way, they would be able to reach their destination before the appointed time. In the morning, the first ray of light bloomed from the east. It reflected on the clouds in the sky and dyed the clouds red. There was purple air coming from the east. The rays of light dispelled the original darkness. The earth recovered and light appeared again. The golden sunlight shone on the grass and trees in the mountain range. The drops of dew became colorful. It was crystal clear and beautiful. Boom, boom, boom. A waterfall cascaded down from the peak of the mountain and into the pool. Layers of clear water splashed out, and a faint fragrance filled the air of the valley. Taking a deep breath gave people a kind of unparalleled enjoyment that made them feel relaxed and happy. Whoosh! In the cave, Sakra's entire body was covered in a thick layer of black chi. The black chi was condensed and didn't dissipate. It shrouded the surroundings and kept rolling. In the surroundings, strands of heaven and earth power quickly entered the black chi. With a long exhalation sound, the black gas rolled violently. Then, it quickly rushed to the middle and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The mighty body in the middle was revealed. A huge black tiger crawled on the ground. Its body was at least twice the size of an ordinary tiger. Looking at it from afar, one could feel a kind of fierce aura circulating around its body. The king's aura condensed and did not dissipate. The purple king's mark on its forehead was even more obvious. The tiger's two eyes suddenly opened. Two rays of light shot out from his eyes. He stood up and shook his sturdy tiger body. Then, he soared into the air with a majestic tiger might. One night can only restore 60% of my strength. The rest, I need to slowly recuperate. Di Shitian's injuries had recovered more than half in this night's recuperation. He did not have time to slowly recuperate. He could only recover slowly with time. The Ape King and the others should have all arrived at the designated destination. It's also time to migrate. Di Shitian thought decisively. He rushed out of the cave and ran out to bite an adult deer to death. He drank the blood and ate the meat. After filling his stomach, he returned to the cave and tied the storage bag to his thigh. He looked at the cave and his eyes flashed with a strange light. He thought of the scene when he was just born. His eyes revealed a threatening coldness. White tiger mother, brother and sister, don't worry. Even if those immortal cultivators catch you to the ends of the earth, I will cultivate to a shocking level and save you. When I find out who caught you, I will destroy their whole family sooner or later. He secretly made up his mind. He turned his head and no longer had any reluctance. Tiger Hill mountain range was only his first stop. Leaving the mountain range was to step into a wider world. All the things that he wanted to take away were all placed in the storage bag. There was nothing left in the cave. Roar. Leaping out of the cave, a heaven-shaking tiger roar came out from Di Shitian's mouth, and his body quickly leaped forward. The direction he went was the valley under the waterfall. Shuttling through the forest, his speed was quite fast. Not long after, the valley appeared in front of him. At this time, the valley was different from before. One could only see that in the sky above the valley, strong goshawks were constantly circling in the sky. When they saw Di Shitian appear, a series of eagle cries rang out. The apes all over the ground heard the cries and immediately got up. In the pool, colorful snakes rushed out. Thousands of wolves lying on the ground also quickly stood up. The kings of the 4 great clans also began to move. They organized their respective clans and spread out in the valley. They formed a continuous, dark mass. Welcome, King. Under the leadership of the 4 kings, for a moment, no matter if it was the vultures, wolves, snakes or apes, they all bowed down towards Sakura, who was walking into the valley in their own way. The spirituality of an ordinary race was limited, but every single one of them was looking at Dai Shitian with a trace of reverence. Millimeter. Rise, all of you. Sakura nodded his head in a low voice. The invisible awe-inspiring aura around his body became even denser. Looking at the valley, the total number of the 4 races added up to more than 100,000. Among them, the number of snakes was too large. They were densely packed and hard to count. As for the others, each tribe only had 2,000 to 3,000 snakes. Adding them all together, it was a rather large number. Just think about it for a moment. What kind of shocking scene would it be when the 4 races were all gathered together? Then, the migration of the entire race, such a scene was truly shocking. Bai Yu, Bai Susu, are the 4 of you ready? King, we are ready. All of our tribe members are gathered here. As long as you give the order, we can start moving. Bai Yu said respectfully. They were not humans. When moving, they did not need too many things. They just needed to follow. King, where are we moving to? Condor King Ying Kong suddenly asked. South. There is no one there. If we keep going south, we will find a suitable place to live. Dai Shitian looked at Ying Kong. Ying Kong's eyes flashed. He said, King, I can fly in the sky. I have left the mountain range before to look around. I have also been to the south. I found a mountain range that is even bigger than this one. It is very hidden, and there are many powerful auras there. He was the king of Condors, and his speed was incomparable. After becoming the king of Condors, he didn't stay on Condor Peak all the time. Instead, he left to observe the surroundings. Compared to the other kings who had never left the mountain range, he had a lot of valuable knowledge. When Dai Shitian heard this, his 2 eyes immediately shot out a shocking light. He realized that the place that Ying Kong mentioned might really be a good place to go. Eagle Kong, how much do you know about that mountain range? Tell me everything. Without hesitation, he asked Ying Kong. The other 3 leaders also looked at Ying Kong. Ying Kong didn't hesitate and immediately told them everything he knew. It turned out that if you kept going south from here, it was called the Southern Land. That area was not suitable for ordinary people to live in. Therefore, there were all kinds of beasts there. Recommended author, Invincible Iron Knight. Author, Otaku Ivildor Bai Cho, the genius otaku of the gaming world, was accidentally playing the latest version of an online game. The system mutated, and he was transported to another world. In the other world, he became a very strong, loving, and promising prisoner who was exiled by his family for molesting a princess. Damn. This joke was too big. As the first virgin in history to transmigrate, Bai Cho found that his future was very bleak. Chapter 43. Poisonous miasma, swamps, and various other incomparably dangerous ominous grounds. In some places, even if a cultivator were to fall into it, their cultivation would be reduced to nothing and they would be completely buried within this mountain range. Of course, at the same time that it was dangerous, there were also various temptations within the mountain range that made cultivators want to enter tirelessly. For example, there were various exotic plants, various rare spirit medicines, precious equipment refinement materials, and so on. All of them were treasures that made cultivators go crazy, and they wouldn't hesitate even if they had to lose their lives. Therefore, in the eyes of those rogue cultivators that didn't belong to a cultivation sect and some cultivation clans, the southern barbaric mountain range was a place that was rather worthy of attention. There would often be rogue cultivators that entered the mountain range with the mentality of luck, hoping to find some spirit medicines that would allow their cultivation to break through. They would be able to find precious equipment refinement materials and refine a top-notch magic weapon. Everyone had the mentality of luck, and there were quite a few lucky people. Those that were able to leave the mountain range were usually those that more or less obtained some benefits. As for those that didn't leave, they would be buried within the mountain range and become food for various ferocious beasts. However, in terms of concealment, Di Shitian and the others could indeed become inconspicuous after entering this mountain range. Moreover, if they were to find a concealed place to live, they might be able to rely on the uniqueness of the southern barbaric mountain range to allow their cultivation to rapidly increase. After all, in the southern barbaric mountain range, there existed a large amount of various spirit medicines that were difficult to grow in ordinary mountain ranges. Such a large mountain range was more than enough to hide them. Southern barbaric mountain range? A contemplative expression appeared in Di Shitian's eyes, and he secretly thought in his heart. This is indeed a good place. I'm a demon, and although I've obtained cultivation techniques, I don't know anything about other techniques. Since there are rogue cultivators and cultivator clans within the southern barbaric mountain range, at that time, I can obtain these cultivation techniques and secret techniques from them. Cultivation requires the support of medicinal pills. Only like this can I increase the speed of cultivation. There are spirit medicines within the mountain range, and I can solve this source of materials. Although Di Shitian wanted to leave the Tiger Hill mountain range because of the cultivators, it was because the Tiger Hill mountain range was only so big, and the most prominent person was himself. If he were to really offend a formidable cultivator, then he would sooner or later suffer a great loss. If he continued to stay in the mountain range, he would be the best example of the saying the tallest tree in the forest will be the first to be destroyed by the wind. He would definitely not have a good ending. The southern barbaric mountain range was different. Even though the number of cultivators that came and went was even more than the Tiger Hill mountain range, within the mountain range, there existed a large amount of mutant beasts or formidable demon beasts. All of this guaranteed that even if he went to the mountain range, he wouldn't attract the attention of anyone and would be able to stay within the scope of the cultivation world. If he had the time and opportunity, he could slowly learn about the immortal cultivation world. He was always aware of the developments in the immortal cultivation world. In addition, there were all kinds of resources in the mountain range that were useful for cultivation. If one were to seriously consider it, then the southern barbaric mountain range was absolutely the best place to go. King, when I was flying in the sky above the southern barbaric mountain range, I once discovered an enormous valley. The valley is very well hidden. If we go there, that place is most suitable for us to live in and establish our foundation. Ying Kong said in the end. These words put down the final bargaining chip in Di Shitian's heart that was originally faintly about to make up his mind. His tiger-like eyes flashed as he said, "All right, we'll go to the southern barbaric mountain range." Ying Kong, how long will it take to go to the southern barbaric mountain range? King, if we move without restraint, it will take at least a month. Ying Kong said straightforwardly. Since he had made up his mind, Di Shitian became even more resolute. He directly looked at the four subordinates in front of him and said, "Ying Kong, you'll lead your clansmen to observe the path and the enemy in the air. If there are any changes, immediately report to me." "Yes, King." Ying Kong responded respectfully. He raised his head to the sky and let out an eagle cry. Immediately, the flock of eagles soared into the sky and circled in the air, beginning to move southward. They observed the movements in all directions. "By you lead your clansmen to explore the path ahead." "Yes, King." Bai Yu nodded in agreement. He also let out a high-pitched wolf howl. Several thousand wolves left the valley and explored the path ahead. "Yuan Tian, give me the monkey wine you brought. I'll carry it. Follow me. Bai Susu, you bring your snakes to bring up the rear. Follow closely behind." Di Shitian gave out one order after another. The monkey wine was a rare spiritual wine that could increase one's demonic power. In the future, when the spirit-gathering pills were used up, he would rely on this wine to increase his cultivation. In the future, when Yuan Tian and the others stepped onto the path of demonic cultivation, these would be treasures to increase their strength. He couldn't be careless. Only when he put them in his storage bag could he truly be at ease. Yuan Tian didn't have the time to let the monkeys gather the monkey wine together. Seeing Sakura use his storage pouch to take away all the spirit wine in one go, this kind of method made him feel and yearn for it even more. After all the orders were given, the grand migration finally began. The flock of eagles flew in the sky, while the wolves explored the path ahead. In the middle, Di and the monkeys supported each other. If there were any changes, they would be able to react in time. With the group of snakes at the back, they could deter any creature that harbored ill intentions. Once the decision was made, they moved quickly. They headed straight for the south. With the eagles in the sky guiding them, there wouldn't be any problems with the direction. Such a migration team could be said to be unhindered in the mountain range. They set off in the morning and hunted some prey along the way. They didn't stop moving. In the evening, Di and the others had already left Tiger Hill mountain range. Di had left, but outside the mountain range, streaks of light could be seen flashing in the sky. If there were immortal cultivators, they would be able to see that those were immortal cultivators flying in the sky on all kinds of Dharma artifacts. There were many such immortal cultivators, and the direction they were heading was precisely the location of Tiger Hill mountain range. On the ground, there were also many immortal cultivators using divine travel talismans and wind-riding talismans. Along the way, two of the immortal cultivators seemed to know each other and walked hand in hand. They immediately began to talk as they hurried along the way. Big Brother Shu, last night, there was lightning and thunder in Tiger Hill mountain range. Someone said that a heavenly tribulation appeared in the mountain range. Now almost all the immortal cultivators in the vicinity are rushing to the mountain range. Do you think someone is really going through a heavenly tribulation or a rare treasure has appeared? A delicate voice sounded. Looking over, they saw that the owner of the voice was a petite young girl. This young girl's temperament was delicate and soft, which made her seem exceptionally lovable. Seeing her, they would naturally have a desire to protect her. She was the kind of person who was born to be cared for and protected by others. It can't be wrong. The possibility of someone going through a heavenly tribulation is not big. In the immortal cultivation world, those who can go through a heavenly tribulation are the ancestors of each sect. If they want to go through a heavenly tribulation, it is absolutely impossible for them to go to such a remote place. It is most likely that a treasure has appeared in the secular world. When the heavenly tribulation appeared, we could feel it from thousands of miles away. The immortal cultivator surnamed Shu was quite happy to answer. Junior Sister Huang, this time there will definitely be a large number of immortal cultivators rushing to the mountain range. As for rare treasures, we don't have any extravagant hopes. Even if there were, it wouldn't be something that Qi condensation disciples like us would be able to get our hands on. We'll wait for the cultivators to gather in the open market and see if we can find anything suitable for us. Bai Xiaochun nodded. The immortal cultivator surnamed Shu seemed to be a person who knew his own limits. He knew that if there really were rare treasures, small immortal cultivators like them would be digging their own graves if they really got involved. They would lose their lives before they could get the treasures. What he really wanted was the market among the immortal cultivators. What was a market? To put it bluntly, it was a place where immortal cultivators traded, or a market. It was like a market in the secular world. However, ordinary people traded ordinary items in the secular world, while immortal cultivators traded various items used by immortal cultivators, such as spiritual talismans and materials, or magic tools and so on. This time, the unusual change in Tiger Hill mountain range would definitely attract many immortal cultivators. At that time, when many immortal cultivators gathered together, there would be a high chance that they would open a market by themselves. They would start trading. After all, it was rare for individual immortal cultivators to meet each other. It was even rarer for so many of them to meet together. There was a 90% chance that a market would open. Therefore, they were not going to the market to look for treasures, but to trade for useful things. Speaking of which, the heavenly tribulation triggered by the Rock Ghost King was simply too powerful. Such a powerful heavenly tribulation could be clearly seen even from thousands of miles away. It was hard not to attract attention. Therefore, from the beginning of the day, a large number of immortal cultivators rushed to the mountain range. Among these people, there were two groups that were more special. One group was led by a middle-aged man with a dignified aura. Behind him, if one looked carefully, one would find that the two foundation establishment cultivators of the Li family who were scared away by Di Shitian's tiger roar that day were among them. Needless to say, this group of people was from the Li family, a family of immortal cultivators. It was no wonder that not only did a young master die in Tiger Hill mountain range, but the two foundation establishment cultivators also lost their magic tools. Most importantly, the psychic compass, which was the family treasure of the Li family, was also lost in the mountain range. The loss was so great that it could be said to be unprecedented. How could the Li family let it go so easily? Moreover, a heavenly tribulation appeared in the mountain range. Immediately, even the core formation ancestors of the family were provoked. A group of people rushed over in a grandiose manner. As for the other group, it was an old man with a frivolous expression. He brought a young girl with him and rushed towards the mountain range. This young girl was none other than Princess Chu Yun, who was extremely obsessed with Black Tiger. Last time, she escaped again, but Qin Hai died at the hands of Di Shitian. This made her finally realize that with her strength, she could not do anything to Black Tiger in the mountain. Therefore, she returned to the capital, found help, and made a comeback. There is only 1 week left for the new book release. For such a long time, I have been suppressed by the great gods. It is difficult for me to breathe. I hope that everyone can help me rush up the new book list in this last week. Let me have a taste of the new book list. Recommend, recommend, and recommend again. Chapter 44. Third Grandpa, you promised Yuna this time that you would give the black tiger to me as a gift when you catch it. The princess of Chu Yun and the old man sat on a green blanket. The blanket was flying in the air. Not only was it not slow, but it was also quite stable. On it, it was more than enough to sit or lie down, let alone stand. The princess of Chu Yun hugged the old man's arm like a little girl and acted coquettishly. The old man had a cynical look on his face. He patted the princess's little head and said, "Little Yun, such a big thing happened when you came out this time. Even the little guy from the Qin family died. If it wasn't for your mother pleading for mercy, you would have been locked up this time until you went to the Lianyun sect. Hee. I know that third grandpa loves Yuna the most. He definitely won't do that." The princess of Chu Yun was not afraid. Instead, she smiled. "All right, you mischievous girl. This time, I want to see what's so strange about that powerful black tiger you mentioned. Once I catch it, third grandpa will play with it for a few days, then I'll let it be your spirit beast." The old man also had a playful look on his face. His name was Chu Guan, and he was ranked third in his generation. His temperament was more mischievous. This time, Chu Yun rushed home in a hurry and even let Qin Hai of the Qin family die in the Tiger Hill mountain range. This kind of thing was neither big nor small. The main thing was that according to Chu Wo and the others' description, the black tiger's uniqueness attracted the attention of the family. A spirit that had not advanced to the realm of demonic beasts could beat two foundation establishment cultivators away. The sound wave attack of the tiger's roar was so shocking. Vaguely, some people guessed that this black tiger was a mutated beast. Otherwise, even a tiger that had become a spirit would not have such terrifying strength. Therefore, after a discussion at home, they let Chu Guan, who was already a core formation cultivator, take Chu Yun to the mountain range again. At the same time, he subdued the black tiger and brought it back. Among the birds and beasts, there was a very special situation, and that was mutation. The basis of mutation was in the bloodline. For example, the offspring born from the union of a vermilion bird and an eagle would have the bloodline of both the vermilion bird and the eagle. Perhaps the offspring would be born in the form of an eagle, and under some special circumstances or some kind of fortuitous encounter, the vermilion bird bloodline in the body would be stimulated, resulting in mutation. Perhaps he would become a vermilion bird, or perhaps he would become another type of living being. This state was called mutation. In addition to ordinary birds and beasts, there were many natural spiritual beasts in this world. They were creatures that were born with intelligence and were much stronger than other beasts. In terms of talent, ordinary species couldn't even catch up. This time, after hearing Chu Yun's story, the Chu family immediately had a guess. The black tiger could be the kind of mutated beast that was produced after a mutation, which was why it had such powerful strength. If they could catch it and nurture it, they might be able to make a powerful guardian spirit beast appear in the family. That was why a core formation expert was sent here. Along the way, the immortal cultivators they met were all rushing in the direction of the Tiger Hill mountain range. Some were going for the market that might be held, and some were going for the rare treasures that might exist in the forest. All of this made Tiger Hill, a mountain range that was originally not too eye-catching, into a mix of good and bad people for a time. It was very lively. However, regardless of whether they were looking for the black tiger, they were still looking for treasures. They didn't have much to gain. How could they know that the black tiger they were looking for had already left the mountain range decisively and was leading the vast migration team to the south quickly? Along the way, there was no lack of mountains and forests. The monkeys could pick all kinds of fruits. In addition, when they left the Monkey Valley, they had already brought a lot of fruits with them, so they didn't need to worry about food. In the sky, the vultures were the fastest, so it wasn't a problem for them to find food. As for the snakes, they also ate water plants. There was no lack of food for the insects underground. The south was said to be desolate because there was no human habitation. There was no lack of mountains and forests, and all kinds of birds and beasts could be found at will. Every time the wolves stopped to rest, a part of them would go out to look for prey. Therefore, on the migration path, food wasn't a problem that troubled them. On the road, there was a group of eagles in the sky guiding them. When they met a mountain, they crossed a mountain, and when they met a river, they crossed a river. They moved straight in the direction of the southern barbaric mountain range. During the urgent migration, time flashed by. The sun rose and the moon set, and day and night alternated. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. During these 3 days, Di Shitian silently operated the Tiger Roar technique as he walked, healing the remaining injuries in his body. The injuries in his meridians and various parts of his body were recovering every day. In addition, when he rested at night, he took out the monkey spirit wine and drank a mouthful every time he cultivated. This made him discover another effect of the spirit wine. It could nourish the meridians and warm the whole body, which was extremely beneficial for the recovery of injuries. Therefore, after 3 days, his injuries were much better, and his strength was directly restored to 80%. According to Di Shitian's estimation, if this continued, it would only take another 3 days or so for his previous injuries to be completely healed. Ancient trees towered into the sky. The morning dew dotted the blooming flowers. The light of the morning sun shone through the branches and leaves, adding a trace of vitality to the gloomy mountain forest. In the early morning, the originally quiet mountain forest was broken by a burst of chaotic footsteps. If there was someone at this time, they would see a rather strange scene. Thousands of strong wolves were scouting the way in front. Some female wolves were leading their cubs behind. In the middle, there were groups of monkeys jumping around quietly. Behind them, there was a huge group of snakes. There were all kinds of venomous snakes. When people saw them, their scalps would go numb and they would shudder. In the sky, if one looked carefully, they would see thousands of goshawks constantly soaring and circling in the sky. The cries of the goshawks could be clearly heard. These races were supposed to fight to the death when they met, but here, they were strangely strange. Not only were there no signs of fighting, but they were moving forward one by one. These animals' eyes would occasionally look at the incomparably large black tiger in the middle, revealing a trace of reverence. Roar! Just as they were moving forward rapidly, the high-pitched cry of an eagle pierced through the sky. Di Shitian looked up and saw a huge vulture gliding down quickly, bringing a strong gust of wind with it as it stood on the ground. King, this subordinate saw a mountain in front. There is a strange fog everywhere on the mountain, just like the white python's place. It is on the road that we are going to pass by. The Eagle King opened his mouth and revealed an unexpected news. What? The same fog above the mountain stream where the white python used to live, could it be miasma? Di Shitian's heart could not help but tighten. At the beginning of the migration, he guessed that this long road would not be smooth sailing, there would be considerable difficulties and obstacles in front of them. In the past, there was fog in the mountain stream whereby Susu lived, That was because the creatures living in the mountain stream were all poisonous snakes. There were so many of them that the poisonous gas they breathed out was too large, intertwining and rising, forming a poisonous miasma. On the other hand, if there was miasma, it meant that there must be highly poisonous creatures nearby. Either there was a large number of them, or there was a peerless ferocious creature. Now, there was such a mountain in front of Eagle Kong. It was likely that there would be extraordinary danger on the mountain. Pondering, he looked to his side. There were tens of thousands of creatures around. If it was miasma, he had a way to deal with it, but most of the creatures that followed were ordinary beasts. If they rushed into the miasma, they would definitely die. The miasma was not scary. Di Shitian could shatter the miasma with the tiger roar and blow it away. However, the poisonous creatures in the mountain were a big trouble. Eagle Kong, do you see any other roads in the sky that can bypass that mountain? Di Shitian pondered for a moment and looked up at Eagle Kong. Yes, but it will take at least 5 more days of travel. The road is not easy to walk on. Eagle Kong had already seen it in the sky, so he answered quickly. 5 days. Di Shitian's heart sank. The migration this time was too large, and he did not have the powerful ability to move so many creatures at once. It would take a month to reach the southern barbaric mountain range from here. During this month, it was very likely that some of these creatures would fall behind or die before reaching the destination. Eagle Kong, you lead the way. We will go directly through the mountain. After pondering for a moment, he decided that it was impractical to take a detour. They would go directly over the mountain, which would take at most half a day. At worst, they would have to fight with the poisonous creatures on the mountain. Howl! Eagle Kong soared into the sky and led the way in front. However, the huge team continued to move forward. Sure enough, it did not take long for a mountain to appear in front of them after leaving the forest. Speaking of which, this mountain was not very high, and the peak was not very steep. It was just relatively large. If they went straight through, it would take at least half a day to pass through this mountain. There were many trees on the mountain, but they were generally not very tall. In many places, there was a strange thick fog. This fog, even under the illumination of the sun, was not penetrated by a trace of sunlight. The whole mountain, how to put it, had a rather strange feeling. Silence. There was a deathly silence. Different from ordinary mountains, this mountain seemed to have mountains, rivers, trees, and grass, but it was too quiet and lacked a kind of vitality. It gave people a rather oppressive feeling. Just from this feeling, one could know that this was definitely not a good mountain. Eagle Kong, this is the mountain you mentioned. Although he was very sure in his heart, Di Shitian still asked. King, this is the place. Eagle Kong seemed to be very afraid of this mountain. With the support of my brothers, I finally rushed to the new book list. I won't say many words of thanks. Those behind me are about to catch up. Brothers, in order to protect your reputation, in order to explode other people's reputation, let's throw votes together. The more recommendations, the more I will repay with more chapters in the future. Please everyone. Chapter 45. Looking carefully at the mountain in front of them, the miasma on the mountain wasn't enough to block the way forward. After all, although there was miasma, it didn't cover the entire mountain. As long as they avoided the miasma, they could still go through. What they really needed to pay attention to was the poisonous creatures that created the miasma. Bai Yu, Yuan Kong, Susu, the 3 of you immediately gather your tribes and don't scatter. Gather together before entering the mountain. Di Shitian calmly ordered his subordinates. Yes, King. At this time, no one had any objections. Bai Yu and the other 2 immediately began to gather their tribes and unite. Ying Kong, take your eagles and coordinate in the sky. If there are any changes, immediately use your advantage in the air to attack the enemy. Di Shitian ordered Ying Kong. Among the 4 tribes, Ying Kong could be said to be the most relaxed. With their advantage in the air, they could easily fly over. Yes, King. Ying Kong took the group of eagles to soar into the sky and began to hover above Sakura and the others. Pairs of sharp eagle eyes began to observe every corner in large numbers. Enter the mountain. With that order, the majestic migration team once again began to move up the mountain. This mountain was actually called Centipede Mountain. As the name implied, there were a large number of centipedes on this mountain. Moreover, the centipedes here were more venomous and ferocious than ordinary centipedes. Any bird or beast on the mountain would be eaten by the centipedes as long as they stayed here. Over time, even ordinary birds and beasts knew how dangerous this mountain was and rarely dared to come close. In the end, it became a real centipede mountain. The centipedes were highly poisonous. When they breathed, the poisonous gas they exhaled condensed into clouds of miasma on the mountain. There wasn't much miasma at the moment, but after a few hundred years, the entire mountain would be shrouded in miasma. In a large cave at the top of the mountain, a grey poisonous gas was emitted from the cave. Looking through the poisonous gas, one could clearly see a huge centipede in front of them. This centipede was quite frightening. It was at least 10 meters long, and its body was connected by segments. Counting carefully, there were a total of 100 segments. Lying in the cave, it looked abnormally ferocious. It could be said to be a peerless poisonous creature. According to legend, centipedes only grew one segment a year. With the lifespan of a centipede, it was quite rare to grow to 30 segments. If it grew to 100 segments, it wouldn't be a spiritual beast with spiritual intelligence. This 100-segment centipede was able to grow to such a terrifying extent today because of a fortuitous encounter. A few decades ago, it had swallowed a purple fruit and slowly gained spiritual intelligence. The 100-jointed centipede lay in the cave, looking out of the cave. It seemed to be reminiscing. Ever since it gained sentience, it had become the king of the centipedes on the mountain. After that, it led a group of centipedes to eat small animals like rabbits and water deer. After eating them, it felt that it was very beneficial. It found that after eating and sleeping, its strength would increase. Moreover, the more it ate, the stronger the target, and the faster its strength would increase. Therefore, it took a group of centipedes to hunt for various birds and beasts on the mountain. In just a few decades, its body increased to 100 segments. It became a 100-segment centipede. Considering the level of intelligence it possessed, it was impossible for it to ponder such profound questions. Therefore, it had no idea that the thing it had consumed was known as blood food among demonic cultivators. Blood food existed in the body, and although there was no special technique to cultivate and refine it, some of it would naturally be absorbed by the body as it slept. That was why the increase in strength happened. It didn't know that. It only felt that after it ate, it would increase its strength when it slept. Therefore, over the years, the centipedes multiplied rapidly, and their numbers became extremely large. It also ate almost everything that could be eaten on the mountain. At this time, staying in the cave, it couldn't help but miss the taste of blood food. Rustle, rustle. At this time, a relatively large centipede crawled into the cave. It wasn't as terrifying as the 100-segment centipede king, but it was still a meter long. After this centipede came in, it began to squeak. Hearing it squeak, the 100-segment centipede king's eyes immediately lit up, revealing a ferocious gleam of excitement. It squeaked a few times at the small centipede. Immediately, the centipede crawled out again. Its speed was quite fast. It didn't know how many legs it had, so it was difficult not to be fast. Patter. Patter. Di Shitian led the group of beasts up the mountain carefully, deliberately avoiding the miasma. Every one of them had their ears pricked up. Those ordinary groups seemed to be able to feel the oppressive aura around them as soon as they entered the mountain. Even the monkeys, who had been jumping and jumping all the time, didn't jump around at this time. Instead, they huddled together timidly. It's strange. We're already halfway up the mountain. Why hasn't anything happened yet? The atmosphere is a little different. At this time, Di Shitian took the lead and walked at the front. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings quickly. As he walked forward step by step, the tigers might burst out from his body and waved in all directions, intending to warn the creatures in the mountain. If they were ordinary birds and beasts, they wouldn't dare to approach easily when they felt the strong tiger's might, the aura of the king of beasts. The mountain they were on now was unusual. He estimated that the creatures on the mountain were definitely not ordinary creatures. Therefore, he didn't let down his guard at all. Now, although they had walked all the way to the mountainside safely, it didn't mean that there was no danger. On the contrary, he felt that this seemed to be the calm before the storm. The oppressive aura reverberated around. Rustle, rustle, rustle. At this moment, suddenly, from all directions, there was a sound of a large number of strange things crawling on the ground, and it was quite dense. All around, the long weeds were swaying violently. The sound came from all directions. Oh! Di Shitian looked up to the sky and let out a shocking tiger's roar. He looked around and was shocked by what he saw. On the ground, in all directions, there were centipedes densely packed. These centipedes were quite large. Each of them was as thick as a baby's arm. They were of different lengths and there was an extremely large number of them. They rushed out from all directions and surrounded the migration team in an instant. Centipedes, it's actually centipedes. Di Shitian's eyes shone with a cold light. These centipedes surrounded them but didn't attack immediately. They seemed to be waiting for something. Whoosh! Suddenly, in front of Di Shitian, the densely packed centipedes suddenly opened up a path. 3 centipedes that were 1 to 2 meters long crawled out from the centipedes. They walked to the front and glanced at the surrounded migration team in the middle. There was a murderous look in their eyes. They let out a roar. Immediately, countless centipedes charged toward Di Shitian and the others like a tide. Oh! Di Shitian roared. Immediately, the tribe behind him started to defend. Snakes and centipedes were natural enemies. Under Bai Susu's lead, they blocked one side. Bai Yu the Wave King let out a long howl and kept stomping on the centipedes with his claws. The apes also waved their claws and attacked. The eagles in the sky were the main force of the attack. They had the advantage in the sky and were the natural nemesis of poisonous creatures like the centipedes. In a short period of time, under the leadership of a few kings, they fought fiercely with the centipedes. However, looking at the tide of centipedes around them, they wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Jun Buwen, a 100-legged centipede, died but didn't fall down. The centipede's vitality was extremely tenacious. They also had a hard shell, which was their best protection. Hiss! The 3 giant centipedes in front of Di Shitian moved their countless legs quickly on the ground and pounced toward Di Shitian from 3 directions. These 3 centipedes were beginning to have spirituality. Perhaps, it wouldn't be long before they would have spirituality and become spiritual beasts. They had more than 10 segments of their bodies. As long as they had 30 segments, they would become spiritual beasts. Oh! Seeing the 3 giant centipedes pouncing toward him without any fear, they were unusually ferocious. Their eyes were filled with endless ferocity. Instantly, the tiger's eyes turned cold. The pitch-black tail suddenly rose high, like a steel whip, faintly emitting a dark light. It whipped out in an instant. It directly whipped a giant centipede that was attacking him from the side. The place where it whipped happened to be the middle of the centipede. Bang! The outer shell of the centipede was very hard, but after all, they had yet to become a demon. The tail that Sakura pulled out was infused with demonic power, so one could imagine how powerful it was. The outer shell of the giant centipede exploded on the spot, and the slender body that had more than 10 segments was split into 2, falling to the ground and wriggling continuously. The 100-legged centipede died but didn't fall down. Even if it was broken into 2 segments, it didn't die immediately. The remaining 2 centipedes, one attacked from the front and the other from the right, bit toward his waist. Oh! Di Shitian's eyes were cold. Looking at the centipedes in front of him, he didn't dodge. He was the king of beasts. There was no need for him to dodge a few giant centipedes. He opened his big tiger mouth and bit at the giant centipede that was pouncing toward him in the air. When the giant centipede saw Di Shitian open his mouth wide, its speed in the air became a little faster. It rushed straight toward his mouth. It actually wanted to enter Di Shitian's mouth and bite through his internal organs. Attacking from the inside of the enemy's body was indeed the centipede's specialty. Whoosh! The giant centipede's speed was very fast. Ordinary people's eyes couldn't track it at all. However, in Di Shitian's eyes, there was no concealment to speak of. The giant centipede was about to enter his mouth, begging for votes. Chapter 46. Catcher. The canines in Di Shitian's mouth were incomparably sharp. When he bit down with all his might, even a stone would be crushed in an instant. The giant centipede's body just happened to pass through his mouth. The giant centipede thought that its speed was very fast and that it could enter Di Shitian's stomach from his throat before he could react. However, Sakra's eyes were extremely sharp. He saw all of its intentions and actions. Just as it entered the tiger's mouth, he opened his mouth and instantly bit down. With a crisp sound, the front half of the centipede was bitten into pieces on the spot. Then, after a few swallowing, the whole centipede was chewed into pieces in his mouth. Gulp. With a sound, he swallowed it into his stomach. Although centipedes were poisonous creatures were often very nutritious. For example, the gallbladder of a snake. Centipedes could be used as medicine. This giant centipede could almost become a spirit beast's poison. After being chewed up and swallowed by Di Shitian, it was simply a great supplement. It was no less than drinking the monkey spirit wine or eating a spirit gathering pill. Blood food was also the most direct way for a demon cultivator to increase their strength. For example, the 100-segment centipede on the Centipede Mountain was able to grow to 100 segments by eating a large amount of blood food. If it grew to 101st segment, it could break through to become a demon beast. It was obvious that blood food was also very important. Hiss. At this moment, the last giant centipede soared into the air. It opened its serrated fangs and bit down on Di Shitian's waist. Pater. Di Shitian didn't care at all. Instead, he looked coldly at the centipede's attack. When the centipede's waist was about to bite him, a crisp sound was heard. The sharp fangs were all broken. The one who was injured wasn't Di Shitian. Instead of biting through the skin, the centipede's fangs were all broken. Roar. The Sakra let out a low roar. The purple king mark on his forehead pulsated unceasingly at this moment, bursting with the supreme majesty of the king of beasts. He opened his big mouth and sucked towards the giant centipede. In a split second, a gust of wind blew in front of him out of nowhere. The giant centipede was bound by a strange power and struggled to fall into the huge tiger's mouth. With a few cracking sounds, this giant centipede was once again like the previous one. It was chewed into pieces. It was swallowed into his stomach. Centipedes are great supplements. After eating 2 giant centipedes in a row, a wave of heat began to rise in his body. His tyrannical body had already absorbed the hidden power and essence of the centipedes. Whoosh. Looking around, although he had already taken care of the 3 giant centipedes, there were too many of them. They were everywhere, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. It was as if the entire mountain had become a sea of centipedes. Although Bai Yu and the rest led their people to fight back with all their might, under the tide-like attack of the centipedes, they suffered great losses. In the blink of an eye, each of the tribes had been bitten by the centipedes. Once bitten, the ordinary animals began to turn black all over. They fell to the ground. Clearly, the centipedes were highly poisonous. Seeing this situation, Di Shitian didn't hesitate. He took a deep breath and a gust of wind blew in front of him. His already huge tiger body became even bigger in an instant. Roar. The air that he swallowed in his stomach was spat out in an instant. It rushed out of his throat in a special way. In an instant, a huge tiger roar broke the sky like a thunderclap. He didn't use sound waves. Just the power of the roar alone was enough to turn the tide of the battle. Bang, bang, bang. The entire mountain peak trembled violently in an instant. The countless centipedes in the surroundings felt as if a muffled thunder had suddenly sounded in their minds. On the spot, all the centipedes in the surroundings felt a buzzing sound in their heads. Their consciousnesses were shaken, and their entire heads were shattered into pieces and turned into mush. Hiss. How could an ordinary centipede possibly survive under Di Shitian's tyrannical tiger roar? It was wiped out in one fell swoop. However, just at this moment, a roar suddenly came from the mountain. Within the roar, there was a strong fishy wind. In almost a blink of an eye, an incomparably huge centipede that was at least 10 meters long and as thick as an adult rushed down. It opened its mouth and spat out a poisonous wind towards Di Shitian. The centipede's carapace was extremely smooth and as thin as a cicada's wing. It was like a sharp curved blade. Its body had 100 segments, which were equivalent to 100 sharp blades. Its entire body was crimson red, and the poisonous gas it exhaled carried a fiery aura. It was as if it was about to spit out fire. Roar. Di Shitian's reaction wasn't slow. When the centipede queen pounced on him, he raised his tiger claw and swung it forward. In an instant, a pitch-black claw mark was aimed at the centipede queen's head. At the same time, the tiger roar didn't stop. Rings of pitch-black sound waves bombarded the centipede queen like a tidal wave. Bang, bang, bang. The centipede king's head was smashed by Sakra's claw. The sharp tiger claw actually scratched out a deep claw mark on its incomparably hard carapace. The sound waves of the tiger's roar unceasingly bombarded its body, causing its carapace to constantly emit a dull rumbling sound. The terrifying power was transmitted into its body. On the spot, the centipede queen's attack on Di Shitian came to a halt. However, the centipede queen was a veteran. It stopped, but it wasn't too far away from Di Shitian. Lying on the ground, its body suddenly became like a long whip. The lower half of its body instantly coiled towards Di Shitian. The blades on the side of its body flashed with a cold light. With these sharp blades, as long as it coiled around its body, even if it was a king with intelligence, without any special abilities, they would be cut in half on the spot. Roar. Di Shitian's tiger body shook, and thick black gas spurted out from countless pores all over his body, instantly enveloping his entire body completely. He took a deep breath, and his originally huge body once again became bigger. His two hind legs heavily stomped on the ground, and his huge tiger body soared into the air, leaping into the air. This leap was just right, just enough to avoid the slender body of the centipede queen, and let the body of the centipede queen sweep past Di Shitian's body with a swoosh. Bang! Just as the centipede's body was about to fall, a huge tiger claw swooped down from the sky and pressed down on the centipede's tail. This claw contained a huge amount of demonic energy that Di Shitian had poured into it. With one move, a terrifying power burst forth and pressed the centipede heavily onto the ground. Roar. Di Shitian pressed down on the centipede's last section with one of his tiger claws, while the other tiger claw instantly swung up. Dense demonic energy spewed out, condensing into a huge black tiger claw in front of him. With a loud bang, it struck the last section of the centipede's body where it was connected to the front section. Hiss! How ferocious was Sakra's attack! Moreover, it landed on the joint of every segment of the centipede's body. Without the protection of the carapace, the last segment was forcefully torn apart from the centipede's entire body by the claw on the spot. The intense pain immediately caused the centipede to let out a shocking roar, and a bloody mist filled the air. This centipede queen was truly a ferocious creature. Although it had lost a section of its body suddenly turned around. A red light flashed beside Di Shitian, and an intense pain came from his body. Looking closely, it turned out that the centipede queen had actually turned its body upside down, and in an instant, a huge wound was cut open on the left side of his back. Fresh blood flowed out from the wound and gushed down. In a short confrontation, in just a few breaths of time, the battle between Sakra and the centipede queen had already become incomparably fierce. Even though the time was short, the danger within it was not something that outsiders could understand. A huge wound appeared on Di Shitian's body, and a section of the centipede queen's body had been cut off. Tragic, extremely tragic. The battle separated, and they stood facing each other from a distance. The surroundings were silent. A large number of centipedes had been killed by Di Shitian's tiger roar. At this moment, Bai Yu and the others had all retreated a distance away. They knew that the battle in front of them was not something that they could interfere in. What a powerful centipede! Its strength is probably at the peak of the demon realm, and it could break through to become a monster at any time. If not for the fact that it doesn't know how to use its monster power, I would be in danger today. Di Shitian's eyes were cold. Looking at the centipede queen in front of him, he was also shocked. There was actually such a powerful existence that was about to become a monster on this mountain. It was truly terrifying. Hiss. The centipede queen's eyes were filled with ferocity. With a roar, it was about to charge over. However, at this moment, a red light suddenly appeared in the sky. This flowing light was originally going to fly through the sky, but it seemed to have noticed something unusual below. It actually paused in midair, and then appeared above the centipede mountain and stopped. When it stopped, one could see what that flowing light was. It was a middle-aged man wearing a Taoist robe with red edges. His face looked righteous. He was standing on a crimson sword. Even if the sword was stopped, one could still feel the rolling heat waves from the sword. There were faint flames rising on the sword. This man stood on the flying sword and saw Di Shitian and the centipede queen's figures below. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He laughed loudly and said, "Luck, I'm really lucky." A red flame centipede. A mutated black tiger. 2 types of spirit beasts, both of which are extremely rare in the immortal cultivation world. Moreover, they are about to become monster beasts. If I capture them and cultivate them, I might have 2 more powerful spirit beasts guarding the mountain. I didn't find the celestial fragrance fox king, but I found 2 spirit beasts first. Coincidentally, I have 2 beast taming collars. Today, I'll capture you. After that, a light flashed in his hand, and 2 inconspicuous collars appeared. From where the light flashed, one could see that he was wearing a simple ring on his finger. The collars were taken out from the ring. Recommended book by a friend. Carrying a tree with me. Author's name: Don't Drink Waterjong, and did not farm, nor did he plant gold and silver. Instead, he planted trees. What he planted was not an ordinary tree, but a mysterious tree. Starting from planting trees, he walked all the way to the peak of life. Planting trees brought about a happy life. Planting trees made him a top-notch expert. Planting trees effortlessly and reaping a lot of benefits. Chapter 47. In the world of cultivators, storage bags were not the only things that could be used to store things. In fact, storage bags were not the lowest type. There were other types of storage treasures, such as storage rings, also known as universal rings. Containing the universe, the space inside was much larger than that of storage bags. This kind of tranquil ring was very rare for ordinary people. Ordinary people couldn't have it at all. Firstly, the materials needed to refine it were too rare. Secondly, the people who knew how to refine it were even rarer. Therefore, most of the tranquil rings were passed down from ancient times. Every universal ring could be said to be a symbol of status. Now, the middle-aged man in the air was wearing one. It was not hard to imagine that this person's status was definitely not simple. The middle-aged man held the 2 collars and looked down at Di Shitian and the centipede queen. He tossed them lightly, and countless talismans emerged from the collars. The beast collars also began to expand. In the blink of an eye, they became as big as hula hoops. Hum. The 2 beast collars trembled slightly in the air and made a soft sound. A breathtaking and mysterious aura was emitted from the collars. It enveloped the people below. This ring again. What exactly is it? Why do I feel a very dangerous aura from it, as if it is my nemesis? When Di Shitian saw the 2 beast collars above his head, his heart suddenly tightened. It was not the first time he had seen the beast collars. He had seen Zheng Baichuan use them before. However, his tiger roar had shaken them down. He did not expect to see them here again. Although he did not know what this strange ring was, the feeling of threat was constantly beating in his heart. He stared at the beast collars. Every beast collars I use is 1 less. However, it was worth it to catch these 2 spiritual beasts. The red flame centipede's attributes are compatible with mine. If I train it well, it may be a great help to me in the future. Bind. The middle-aged man lightly pointed at the beast-controlling collars. In a split second, 2 beast-controlling collars could be seen flying towards the necks of Sakura and Centipede Queen respectively. During this process, The talismans on the beast-taming collars broke free from the collars and turned into long ropes made of talismans that quickly wrapped around the two spirit beasts. Once touched by the talisman, it would be impossible to escape. Swish! The beast-controlling collar that flew toward the centipede king was very successful. Countless talismans instantly wrapped around its body, tightly binding it. No matter how hard it struggled, it could not break free. The beast-controlling collar also successfully wrapped around the centipede king's neck. Instantly, the centipede queen seemed to have lost all its strength and collapsed to the ground. However, how could Di Shitian allow the strange hoop to be wrapped around his neck? First, he waved his tiger claw and condensed a pitch-black tiger claw in mid-air. He slammed it towards the beast collar, but it was quickly disintegrated by the strange talisman. It only made the beast collar pause for a moment. His momentum did not decrease at all. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of Zhongxian. Right in front of this seemingly irreversible situation. A ribbon appeared out of thin air and floated to the front of the beast collar. With a gentle shake, a seven-colored halo burst forth and swayed on the beast collar. Buzz! The ribbon seemed to contain boundless power, and it sent the collar flying backward on the spot. A strange fragrance floated in the air. A fragrant ribbon. It's the celestial fragrance Fox King. Seeing the ribbon appear, the middle-aged man was not shocked but delighted. He laughed and said, "Celestial fragrance Fox King, I've searched high and low for you, only to find you without any effort. I've been looking for you for so long, but I didn't expect to meet you here. Since you're here, what's the point of hiding?" After he finished speaking, a powerful divine sense instantly burst out from his body and frantically scanned the surroundings. Hee. A burst of clear and melodious laughter reverberated in the air. In front of the middle-aged man, the mysterious girl who had always been following behind Sakura suddenly appeared. Looking at the other party, she said, "Green Cloud Ox Nose, you chased me for 3 days and 3 nights. I was planning to sneak up on you once, but I didn't expect you to be so shameless as to attack a junior of the demon cultivators." This girl was a rare powerhouse of the demon clan, the celestial fragrance Fox King. Her strength was not inferior to a nascent soul cultivator at all. This time, she had planned to follow Di Shitian and secretly observe him for a while. She did not plan to reveal herself in front of Di Shitian, but she did not expect that the nascent soul-old monster Qingyun would be unwilling to part with her and search for her nearby. She even let him run into Di Shitian and the others. It didn't matter that the centipede queen was taken away by Qingyun, but she could not watch Di Shitian be restrained by the beast collar. That was why she made a move at the last moment. When she made her move, she already knew that there would be no peace between her and Qingyun Oxnose. "Haha, I've found you. A mere spiritual beast is nothing. Celestial fragrance Fox King, if you know what's good for you, hand over the imperial heavenly treasure box quickly. How can such a treasure be coveted by a demon like you?" Qingyun Ox-Nose scolded loudly with a violent look on his face. HMPH, Qingyun Ox-Nose, the imperial heavenly treasure box was originally found in the Godfall Abyss. Only the worthy can obtain it. I was the first one to obtain it. You chased after me for 3 whole months with the slogan of eliminating demons. You talk about righteousness, but you're just a hypocritical villain. The celestial fragrance Fox King snorted disdainfully and said, "The imperial heavenly treasure box is with me. If you have the ability, come and get it yourself. I'd like to see what ability you have to take the box from me." After saying that, the celestial fragrance Fox King waved the ribbon in her hand. Immediately, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth went wild. Rays of colorful light with a strange fragrance drifted towards Qingyun Ox-Nose. The fluttering of the ribbon seemed to be able to attract the spiritual energy in the surroundings. Even heaven and earth began to shake. "Demonic woman, today is the day you die." Qingyun Ox-Nose formed a sword seal in his hand. The treasured sword under his feet flew up and trembled violently in front of him. The treasured sword split into 2, then 3. In the blink of an eye, there were thousands of identical treasured swords in the air. They quickly formed a sword wheel and blasted towards the celestial fragrance Fox King. Boom, boom, boom. For a moment, there was a series of violent explosions in the air. Terrifying energy surged in all directions and landed on the ground, creating terrifying craters. Bang! A loud explosion shook the sky. The celestial fragrance Fox King's ribbon rolled back and her body turned into a colorful ray of light. She quickly fled into the distance and shouted, "Qingyun Ox Nose, your strength is only SOSO. It seems like you won't be able to take the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Box. Hee. Demonic woman, don't run. Even if I have to go to the ends of the earth, this seat will catch up to you and have you executed by my Qingyun sword." When old monster Qingyun saw that the celestial fragrance Fox King had actually fled, his face was filled with rage. He didn't care about anything else. First, he put away the Beastmaster collar and the Centipede King that was trapped in it. Then, he stepped onto his flying sword and chased after the celestial fragrance Fox King. How could he care about Sakura, who was above and below? Looking at the two streaks of light that were rapidly disappearing, Di Shitian let out a heavy breath. The pressure just now was simply too great. This unforeseen event had left him inexplicably shocked. He had personally witnessed the strength of these two people. During this period of time, the feeling of strength that had appeared because of his demonic energy had suddenly collapsed. In front of these two people just now, his strength was simply like a child's play. There was nothing to be proud of. Strength. It wasn't just ordinary strength. The terrifying deterrence that he had felt from the Beastmaster collar made him clearly understand that in front of a true expert, he was probably just a little thicker than an ant. But in the eyes of others, he was also a plate of meat that could be eaten at any time. Strength. I must become stronger. I don't want to feel as powerless as before. One day, I will become as strong as them. Di Shitian silently swore in his heart. Silently, he encouraged his fighting spirit. His eyes burned as he looked into the distance, engraving the celestial fragrance Fox King in his heart. This was already the second time he had seen this mysterious woman with his own eyes. The last time, she had used him to protect the admirable treasure box. However, she had also given him the soul-gathering pill as a reward. It was precisely because of the soul-gathering pill that he had been able to obtain such strength in a short period of time. Therefore, although she had used him, she didn't hold any grudges. Instead, she had given him a chance to grow quickly. This was the second time, and she had actually saved him from Qingyun. If the celestial fragrance Fox King hadn't made a move, Di Shitian could foresee that this time, he would have been captured like the Centipede Queen. Bai Yu, Susu, Yuan Tian, Ying Kong, hurry up and leave this place. Use your fastest speed to cross this mountain. Di Shitian only thought about it in his heart. However, he knew that now wasn't the time to think about such unrealistic things. The most important thing now was to quickly leave this place and enter the southern barbaric mountain range. As for strength, he would have it sooner or later. Whoosh! Bai Yu and the others quickly reorganized their respective tribes. After being besieged by the centipede this time, every tribe had suffered considerable losses. However, their vitality hadn't been depleted. Under the leadership of their respective leaders, they all moved forward. Di Shitian didn't leave immediately. Instead, he took out his storage bag and put away the centipede's body that he had torn off from the 100-jointed centipede. Then, he collected a large portion of the surrounding centipede's corpses. He filled the bag to the brim. The centipede's flesh was a great nourishment. Eating it to cultivate would increase one's vitality even more. Normally, there wouldn't be such an opportunity. How could he not take advantage of it? Moreover, if he ate the centipede's body part, his demonic power would increase greatly. This was because the Centipede Queen didn't know how to cultivate. Most of the power from its flesh and blood had fused into its flesh. There was a large amount of essence in its flesh and blood. Eating a piece was like eating the flesh of Tangseng in the journey to the west. It was greatly nourishing. The competition for the new book rankings is very fierce. There are corpses all over the ground. Brothers, please throw your votes at me so that I can walk further on the new book rankings. Chapter 48. The Centipede Queen had 100 sections, and if one section was torn off by the Sakura, It was equivalent to taking 1% of the centipede's essence and power into his hands. In addition, the 3 large centipedes from before were also about to break through to become spirit beasts, so the flesh and blood in their bodies were also greatly nourished. After eating them, the Sakra's body was still warm, and hot air was circulating in his internal organs. I can't keep the blood food for too long, or the power inside will dissipate. Luckily, I have a storage bag, so I can keep the blood food fresh. That said, I still need to eat it as soon as possible. After we cross this mountain, I'll find a hidden place to rest for now and let you and the others rest. I'll eat the centipede queen's flesh and absorb the essence and power inside. Di Shitian quickly put the centipedes around him into his storage bag. Only when he could take no more did he hurry towards the migration team. With the centipede queen on the centipede mountain, the other animals had no space to live at all. Now that most of the centipedes had been killed by Di Shitian's roar, and the centipede queen had been taken away by Qingyun, there was no longer anything that could threaten the migration team on the centipede mountain at the moment. Their journey was smooth as they crossed the mountain. Di Shitian used his great control over his body to shrink the wounds caused by the centipede queen. Coupled with the nourishment of his demon force around the wounds, it prevented him from bleeding profusely. At the moment, the blood on the wounds had already coagulated. With his ability, there were no major problems now. After passing through the centipede mountain, they walked for a while and found a valley with a water source. The migration team stopped in the valley to rest. Afterwards, they ate some of the prey they had caught and the centipede meat in their storage bags. Most of the animals began to lie down in the valley and close their eyes to rest. Around the valley, there were naturally strong and smart clansmen of various clans guarding it. Not even the slightest movement could escape their eyes. Di Shitian also used his demonic power to dig out a huge cave in the valley. The Wolf King Bai Yu and the Ape King Yuan Tian guarded the entrance of the cave. He entered the cave and laid down, placing his storage bag in front of him. The centipede queen's flesh contains a large amount of essence. If I eat it, I will definitely be able to quickly recover from my original injuries. The flesh contains 1% of the centipede queen's power. If I absorb it, I might even be able to advance further. Di Shitian had already temporarily buried the matter of the heavenly fragrance fox monarch and Qingyun in the depths of his mind. So what if he knew? To him, the two of them were experts whom he admired like mountains. No matter how much he thought about it, it was impossible for his strength to increase out of thin air. It was not common for a pie to fall from the sky. Self-improvement. Only self-improvement was the only way to go about it. Self-improvement was the only way to grasp the trajectory of one's destiny and change the trajectory of the living beings around them. Seeing the heavenly fragrance fox monarch and the others, Di Shitian's first thought was not fear, but a strong fighting spirit. He told himself that one day, he would be as strong as them, or even stronger than them. As long as his fighting spirit was unwavering, there was nothing in this world that could stop him from becoming stronger. Swoosh! The storage bag flashed, and the corpse of a giant centipede that had been killed by the shock appeared in front of him. Beside it was a huge chunk of the centipede's body. This was the chunk of flesh from the centipede queen. The centipede queen's carapace was relatively tough, but the flesh wrapped in the carapace was relatively tender. Crunch! Di Shitian did not hesitate. He first swallowed the corpse of the last giant centipede. His sharp canine teeth completely ignored the carapace and crushed it. In the blink of an eye, the centipede was chewed into minced meat. Such a nutritious centipede, in his mouth, not only did it not have a fishy taste, it even had a unique fragrance. The texture was extraordinarily good. Gulp! After swallowing the giant centipede into his stomach, his powerful body began to digest it. Waves of heat were emitted from his body. It was warm, and the energy in his body faintly produced a sense of excitement. However, Di Shitian did not immediately enter into cultivation. Instead, he grabbed the carapace of the centipede queen and used his tiger claws to dig out the centipede flesh from the carapace. The centipede queen's carapace was hard, and the giant centipede's carapace could not be compared to it. Even Di Shitian could not swallow it into his stomach. Eating the flesh inside was enough. On the contrary, it was a rather good material for refining weapons. Crunch. After swallowing the centipede queen's flesh and chewing, it tasted 100 times sweeter and more fragrant than the centipede from before. It made one want to eat more. In no time, he swallowed the centipede queen's flesh into his stomach. Boom. The centipede queen was only a step away from becoming a demonic beast. However, it did not know how to cultivate demonic chi. All of its strength was contained within its body. When it swallowed this piece of flesh, the enormous amount of spiritual essence hidden within immediately began to erupt. Waves of ferocious heat were like angry seawater, rapidly surging within its body and gushing out. It was like a blowout. What powerful essence chi! When Di Shitian felt it, he was not surprised but delighted. He quickly closed his eyes and began to circulate the tiger roar technique. He drove the enormous amount of essence chi in his body to circulate in all parts of his body, quickly passing through his meridians. To monster cultivators, blood was one of the most nourishing things in the world. Essence chi was the source of energy in a living creature's body. It was the easiest to absorb and had great benefits to the person who absorbed it. A portion of the essence chi that surged out was driven by the tiger roar technique to circulate in his meridians. A portion of it quickly fused into his flesh and blood. Every time a trace of it fused into his body, the strength of his body increased by a little. At this moment, the countless pores all over his body opened up. Traces of black monster chi continuously gushed out of the pores and condensed into a monster mist in his body. It enveloped his entire body. In the monster mist, Di Shitian's body began to change again. What gushed out of his pores was not only monster chi, but also the impurities in his body. They were being expelled bit by bit. Every time a part of it was expelled, his body became stronger. Every inch of his body hid a huge amount of power, and his control of his body became more proficient. The fur on the outside was also constantly strengthening. It was one body, and its defensive power naturally became stronger. Huff, huff. He exhaled a puff of turbid air from his mouth, causing the monster mist around him to surge. This time, the essence chi hidden in the flesh and blood of the centipede queen and the 3 giant centipedes was really huge beyond imagination. When Di Shitian started to absorb it, a huge amount of essence chi gushed out of his body one after another. Under such stimulation, the tiger roar technique started to circulate in his meridians at a speed that had never been seen before. With the addition of the essence chi, the monster chi in his meridians began to grow at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. It was increasing almost every moment. Essence chi was the most essential power in a living creature's body. When this huge amount of essence chi was integrated into his body, it also quickly healed the damage that he had suffered before. The damage to his meridians was quickly healed, and they became tougher than before. The monster chi in his body continued to grow under the support of the huge amount of essence chi. That night, Wolf King Bai Yu and the others kept their eyes wide open as they guarded the entrance of the cave. They were afraid that something would disturb the king in the cave. After witnessing Di Shitian's strength, the 4 leaders had already completely submitted to him from the bottom of their hearts. It could be said that they were extremely respectful. They really knew their place and treated Di Shitian as the real king. Naturally, they would not let anything happen to disturb this place. When they did things, they did their best. At this moment, the scene in the cave suddenly changed. Outside, the dense black demonic fog that enveloped the sacra suddenly started to roll violently. In an instant, it suddenly expanded and hit the surrounding mountain walls in an instant. Boom! This impact was unusually fierce. It directly caused the entire cave to shake violently a few times. Booming sounds could be heard in the cave. Hum hum hum. This was not the end. The monster mist that burst out did not dissipate. Instead, it quickly gathered and condensed into pitch-black crescent-shaped light blades in the surroundings. The light blades trembled slightly and emitted waves of soft hums. Cold light flickered on the light blades and they quickly danced up and down in the surroundings, drawing out streaks of sharp cold light. There were a total of 10 light blades like this. They flew up and down around Di Shitian, displaying their sharp attack power. Disperse. Di Shitian shouted in his heart. The 10 light blades trembled violently and quickly dispersed. In the blink of an eye, they once again turned into balls of monster mist and quickly entered his body through the pores on his body. Good, good, good. I didn't think that the Centipede King would really help me this time. A piece of flesh allowed my monster chi to directly break through to the late 3rd layer. It was vigorous and unending, almost filling my meridians to the brim. It also allowed me to have an even stronger control over my monster chi. I comprehended the attack method of the monster mist blade. My strength increased greatly. With this, I have even more confidence that I can make a name for myself in the southern barbaric mountain range. It's even more beneficial for me to accumulate strength. Feeling the surging monster chi in his body, Di Shitian almost had an impulse to roar towards the sky. The benefits he obtained from eating the Centipede King's meat this time were truly too shocking. First of all, not only did it allow his body to become even more powerful than before, the injuries that he originally suffered within his body had now been completely healed. There was not a trace of hidden danger. Moreover, the monster chi in his entire body had increased by a large amount. The enormous monster chi had practically filled all the meridians in his body. Now, he could almost feel the tyrannical strength within his body at all times. He had a feeling that if he were to fight with the Centipede King again, he would be completely able to destroy it without being injured. Those with votes, please help me out and throw in a few votes. Chapter 49. If it was said that he was in the early stage of the 3rd layer when all the meridians in his body were connected, then now, he had already broken through to the late stage of the 3rd layer. When all the meridians in his body were filled to the brim with demonic energy, he would have reached the peak of the 3rd layer. At that time, if he wanted to take another step forward, he would need to open up a demonic dwelling. Opening up a demonic dwelling was equivalent to advancing into a demonic beast. At that time, whether it was demonic energy or his own strength, they would all receive a huge leap in improvement. This kind of improvement was the difference between heaven and earth. It could be said that the current Di Shitian had already taken a huge step towards becoming a demonic beast. What was truly joyous was that after his breakthrough, he could control the demonic energy in his body with even greater ease. Thus, he suddenly had a strange thought. The sharp blades on the edge of the Queen Centipede's carapace were indeed quite frightening. They were incomparably sharp. Even with his strong tiger body, after coming into contact with them, a huge wound would instantly appear on his body. This kind of attack power was absolutely frightening to the point of sharpness. If not for the fact that his strength was not weak, and that he knew how to use demonic energy better than the Queen Centipede, he was afraid that he would be at a disadvantage when fighting with the Queen Centipede. If he was slightly careless, he could possibly be instantly dismembered by those sharp blades. Thus, he was thinking whether or not the demonic mist outside his body could also be converted from defense to offense. Once Di Shitian thought of this possibility, he first simulated every step in his mind to see if he could condense it. After thinking it through, he used his control over the demonic mist to compress it bit by bit towards the center. Compress, compress, and compress again. Compressing a large amount of demonic energy towards the same place would cause the originally mist-like demonic energy to begin to condense into a solid substance. Then, under his control, it would form streaks of sharp blades of light. Each of these blades of light possessed an attack power that was not at all as strong as the blades beside the Queen Centipede. The attacks of these blades of light were enough to instantly kill the 2 Foundation Establishment cultivators he had encountered in the past. Because they were formed from demonic energy, Di Shitian directly named this attack method Demonic Mist Blade. With the fiendish mist blade, I will have another method of attack in the future. He no longer needed to be like before, where he didn't even have the means to attack when he encountered an enemy. The tiger roar sound wave is powerful, but it also consumes a lot of demonic energy. With my strength, using it 10 times in a row would exhaust all my demonic energy. Now that I have the demonic mist blade, not only is its attack power strong, it also consumes less demonic energy than the tiger roar sound wave. Sakura stood up, and with a shake of his body, a pitch-black demonic aura gushed out, forming a dense demonic fog. The demonic fog rolled violently and quickly condensed. In the blink of an eye, it once again formed 10 pitch-black demonic fog blades. Hum! One of the demon mist blades issued a soft cry. Then, a pitch-black blade light was drawn in the air. Then, it bombarded the stone wall in front of them. Poof! The demonic mist blade simply ignored the toughness of the stone wall and easily pierced through it. Moreover, it left behind a terrifying blade mark on the stone wall that was at least several meters deep. Furthermore, the demonic mist blade did not dissipate. Instead, it flew out of the stone wall and returned to Di Shitian's side. It continued to fly up and down. It appeared to be quite agile. One could already see how powerful it was from its attack power. After controlling the demon mist blade to fly around him for a while, Di Shitian was somewhat dissatisfied. There are still some flaws. From forming the demon mist to condensing the demon mist blade, it takes a total of 4 to 5 seconds. This time is too long. In battle, even a single second is enough to change the tide of the battle. I have to shorten this time. It would be best if I could condense it with just a thought. At that time, this demon mist blade would become a true offensive weapon. Di Shitian pondered in his heart. This flaw had to be overcome. After all, in battle, the enemy would not wait for you to condense the demon mist blade. He was afraid that before you could condense the demon mist blade, the enemy's attack would have already arrived. This would be an extremely huge flaw. However, knowing this was one thing. If he wanted to shorten this time, he would need to practice again and again. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. Only by practicing this step directly to the bone, with just a thought, the body would be able to condense the demon mist blade as if it was a conditioned reflex. At that time, this attack method would truly begin to be perfected. According to his plan, this demon mist blade method still had considerable potential to be unearthed in the future. Right now, he could only condense 10 blades. When he made a breakthrough in the future, he might be able to condense 100, 1,000, or even in the end, with just a thought, tens of thousands of powerful light blades would appear outside his body. That kind of attack was truly powerful. This time, the test caused a bit of a commotion. Bai Yu, Ying Kong, and the others all entered the cave together. When they saw the demon mist blade dancing around Di Shitian's body, their eyes were filled with the power of their king. Bai Yu and the others stood in front of Di Shitian and bowed respectfully. Whoosh! He quickly dispersed the demon mist blade back into demon mist and absorbed it back into his body. Looking at the 4 subordinates in front of him, he also noticed the reverence and longing in their eyes. He nodded and said, "As long as you do your jobs well, after we settle down in the southern barbaric mountain range, I will slowly teach you some things. At that time, you will also have a powerful force like this king." The best way to subdue people was to use a combination of kindness and authority. This was something he had thought about a long time ago. His own strength wasn't considered strong. Only when the people around him became strong together and formed a force could it be considered truly strong. Therefore, Di Shitian never planned to hide anything from Bai Yu and the others. Teaching them cultivation was something that would happen sooner or later. "Thank you, King." Bai Yu and the others were overjoyed and bowed respectfully together. "All right. Now isn't the time to talk about this. We're still on the path of migration. This time, we've already encountered a centipede spirit. We don't know how many dangers lie ahead. We can't be careless in the slightest. Quickly go out and let your tribe eat their fill. Then, we'll continue to advance towards the southern barbaric mountain range according to the arrangement we made at the beginning. We must reach our destination as soon as possible. Right now, Di Shitian couldn't wait to find a place to settle down. After breaking through to the late stage of the 3rd layer, he only needed a period of time to consolidate. With the assistance of the spirit-gathering pills and monkey wine, he would be able to break through to the peak stage very quickly. At that time, he would open up the demon palace in one go and become a demon beast. Then, he would be able to establish a foothold in the southern barbaric mountain range. "Yes, King." Bai Yu and the others left the cave with excited hearts. However, Di Shitian didn't relax. Instead, he began to practice the demon mist blade that he had figured out. Time after time, he would condense, disintegrate, condense, and disintegrate again. He continuously practiced this action in a cycle. Actually, if the heavenly incense fox monarch saw his current state, she would probably instantly cry out in surprise. Because, in the demon clan, being able to research this kind of attack method on their own when they were at his level was an extremely inconceivable thing. Moreover, even if others had the same level of strength as him, they would absolutely be unable to research this kind of demon mist blade. Even if they could, they wouldn't be able to do it. There was no other reason. Other than Di Shitian, other demon clans wouldn't be able to have such precise control. It far exceeded the spiritual power and demon consciousness of ordinary demons. Only with powerful spiritual power could he have the ability to compress the demon mist, compress, and compress it again to form a light blade. Moreover, he could control it to launch an attack. Just this alone was already a huge gap that ordinary demon clans couldn't cross. Therefore, the demon mist blade was definitely Di Shitian's unique technique at this time. Time passed by as he practiced again and again. In the valley, after all the tribes had finished eating, Di Shitian also stopped practicing. He led the huge migration team and continued to advance towards the southern barbaric mountain under the illumination of the morning sun. The Wolf King led the pack of wolves to scout ahead. The Ape clan was in the middle, and the Snake clan was at the back. In the sky, a group of eagles was constantly circling, occasionally letting out eagle cries to inform the front of the situation and to act as the migration team's eyes. The combination was just right. Along the way, they hurried along at their fastest speed. They had just passed through the Centipede Mountain, and there was no existence stronger than the Centipede Mountain nearby. As long as they felt the domineering tiger aura that Di Shitian deliberately emitted, all the ferocious beasts would avoid him early on. While walking, Di Shitian's mind was constantly thinking about problems. Some were how to perfect the demon mist blade, and some were how to assemble the huge jigsaw puzzle on the Imperial treasure box. His body was walking, but his mind was on these problems. He didn't waste any time. He had already found some clues about the Imperial treasure box. That jigsaw puzzle, as it was perfected bit by bit, had already begun to reveal some clues. Jigsaw puzzles were like this. The more difficult it was at the front, but as long as a certain part was put together, it was equivalent to finding the key to the puzzle. Around this key, he could complete the jigsaw puzzle and finally open the treasure box. Now, Di Shitian was simulating in his mind. After he had some results, when he arrived at the southern barbaric mountain range and settled down, he could begin to solve the jigsaw puzzle and uncover the secret of the treasure box. In the mountain forest, they ate the wind and ate the dew. When the sun rose, they left, and when the sun set, they stopped to rest. They didn't waste any time. With the guidance of the group of eagles, they crossed mountains and rivers. After half a month, they had already covered most of the distance. Along the way, they encountered many accidents, but with Di Shitian's help, they were resolved one by one. Roar. However, just as the journey was smooth, Eagle Kong suddenly let out a high-pitched roar in the sky as a warning. Eagle Kong's huge body circled a few times in the air. With a swoosh, it dove down toward Di Shitian's location. Brothers, I'm rushing up the new book list. This is the last week. After this week, I'll be off the list next week. I hope everyone can help and give me recommendations. Let's see how far I can go on the new book list. Chapter 50. Something's happening up ahead. As soon as he heard Ying Kong's cry, Di Shitian, who was below, heard a thump in his ears. He knew that something must have happened in front. Otherwise, it was only in the afternoon and there was still a long time before evening, so he couldn't have easily descended from the sky. On the other hand, such an abnormal situation, needless to say, must mean that something had happened in front. Sure enough, Ying Kong descended from the sky and said, "King, there are 2 Shoshen cultivators in front of you that you have told us about." His words shocked people to death. As soon as he opened his mouth, Sakura was startled. He had a deep impression of immortal cultivators. The ones he had met in the Tiger Hill mountain range were not very powerful. Whether it was the princess of Chu Yun, Zheng Baichuan, or Li Xiangchen, they were just small cultivators who had just started cultivating. Even if they had powerful backgrounds, they had very little experience in fighting. That was why they seemed so weak under his attack. Even if they were cultivators in the late stage of qi refining, Di Shitian wouldn't have been able to deal with them so easily. As for the two foundation establishment cultivators from the Li family, they were scared away by the overbearing sound waves of the tiger's roar. If they were to really fight, he would not be able to defend himself at all. It was because he knew that he was still too weak to fight against the deep-rooted immortal cultivators. That was why he led his men to migrate. At this time, he didn't want to fight against cultivators. Di Shitian's eyes narrowed when he heard that there were cultivators up ahead. He asked, Ying Kong, why are there cultivators here? Where are they? Your Majesty, I only saw 2 cultivators fighting a bull. The bull was covered in blood. I'm afraid it can't hold on any longer. They're not far ahead. Ying Kong spread his wings and pointed to the front. Lead the way. We'll go and take a look. The other clans will stay here for now. Baiyu, Susu, you 3 take care of your clans. Di Shitian's eyes lit up as he gave the order on the spot. Howl. Ying Kong raised his head and let out a high-pitched cry. His huge wings flapped quickly, creating a gust of wind that blew the leaves on the ground everywhere. His huge body rushed into the clouds and flew forward quickly. Di Shitian stomped heavily on the ground with his 2 hind legs. His burly tiger body leaped forward quickly. He ran forward with a speed that was not inferior to Ying Kong's. The cultivators are fighting a bull. A bull that can make a cultivator fight is definitely not an ordinary one. Maybe it's a spiritual beast with spirituality. I have to go and take a look. If possible, I can save the bull at the right time. Maybe I can take another subordinate. As Sakura ran forward, he was thinking quickly in his mind. He wanted to increase his strength. This strength referred not only to his own strength, but also to the strength of the people around him. If there was a chance, he definitely wouldn't mind letting a few more spiritual beasts like Baiyu and the others who had their own spirituality under his body. This could be regarded as a foundation. Moreover, he was destined to be enemies with the immortal cultivators. If he had the chance to kill a few immortal cultivators, he might be able to collect more treasures. He was quite interested in every item of the immortal cultivators. Killing Li Xiangchen gave him a storage bag and a lot of treasures. If there was a chance to kill a cultivator, he would not let it go. Under the lead of Ying Kong, it didn't take long for Sakura to pass through a mountain forest. Only to hear that in a valley, there was a burst of fierce fighting sounds that kept ringing out. There were even cow cries echoing in the valley. It's here. When Sakura heard this, he knew that the place Ying Kong was talking about should be here. He didn't say much and used his speed to quickly pass through the entrance of the valley. After entering the valley, he quickly scanned the surroundings and found a huge rock. He jumped over and hid his body behind the rock. He controlled his aura so that it did not leak out. After doing this, he poked his head out and looked into the valley. In the valley, the first thing that caught his eyes were the 2 cultivators. One of them left a deep impression on him. That person was quite young, about 20 years old. He was dressed in snow-white clothes and carried an ancient sword on his back. This ancient sword was very strange. It was crystal clear and seemed to be made of some strange crystal. On the hilt, there was a divine dragon's head. It was vivid and lifelike. Just by looking at it, one could feel a boundless deterrence from it. On top of it, there were mysterious lines. These lines formed many profound talismans. It added to the mysterious aura of the ancient sword. The combination of the man and the sword created an indescribable harmony and charm. The sword was extraordinary, and so was the man. To say that this young man looked like Pan and would be demeaning. In this world, there were very few men who could look like him. He was handsome, but not seductive. He had the ability to make women fall in love with him as soon as they saw him. He was extraordinarily handsome and elegant. However, he did not have the natural arrogance that many cultivators would have. Instead, he had a very calm expression, and a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness surrounded him. It was as if he represented the righteous path of heaven and earth. This feeling was very strange and unfathomable. It was as if no matter where he went, people could see that he was the main character. He was born to attract people's eyes and attention. His cultivation was not very high. He was only in the 10th layer of chi refinement, the late stage of chi refinement. The other person was dressed in green. Although he was also handsome, the light on him could not be compared to the young man next to him. It was as if he was born to serve as a foil to the young man. He was fighting with a red bison. The bison's body was already covered with wounds of various sizes. Blood splattered on the ground, dyeing a large patch of the ground red. It was breathing heavily from its nose, spitting out little sparks. Its red eyes were staring at the two people in front of it fiercely. There was also a strong hatred in its eyes. It was as if it hated the two people in front of it so much that it could not live under the same sky. Who is this cultivator? Di Shitian looked at the young man in white and was shocked. He suddenly had a feeling that this person was not simple in the cultivation world. Moreover, it seemed that he would be entangled with this person in the future. It was as if he would be his old enemy. Looking behind the Red Bull, he saw a calf that was much smaller than the Red Bull lying coldly on the ground. On its throat, a sharp sword mark was clearly visible. Blood had formed a blood pool on the ground. There was no trace of life. Obviously, it was already dead. From the looks of it, this calf should be the Red Bull's child, and it was killed by the two cultivators in front of them. Thinking about it this way, it was no wonder that its eyes were filled with deep hatred and ferocity. Even if its body was covered with wounds, it still stared at the two cultivators. Howl! The Red Bull's eyes were red. Suddenly, two pillars of fire shot out from its nose. Like two fire snakes, they quickly rolled towards the green-robed cultivator in front of it. The pillars of fire whistled past, causing the temperature in the air to rise sharply. Evil beast, why haven't you been killed yet? Black Ice Talisman. When the green-robed cultivator saw the two pillars of fire, his expression changed. He flipped his hand and two spirit talismans appeared. He poured his spiritual power into the talismans. Suddenly, the spirit talismans flashed and turned into two clouds of ice mist in front of him. They collided with the two pillars of fire. After a fierce rumble, the pillars of fire melted the ice mist and quickly rolled towards the green-robed cultivator. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of him. Seeing this, the green-robed cultivator's expression couldn't help but change. He quickly shouted, "Eldest senior brother, this fireball is so powerful. I can't hold it anymore. Eldest senior brother, please kill this mad bull. It will help increase the power of your demon-slaying sword." As he spoke, he quickly took out a few spirit talismans and stuck them on his body. Shua. Layers of golden light emerged from his body. In the blink of an eye, it covered his entire body, making him look like a golden man. He had used a Vajra talisman. When the pillars of fire hit him, they roared and shook the golden light shield around him violently. Moreover, the pillars of fire would explode and shatter, blowing away the Vajra talisman on the spot. Clang. At this time, the white-robed youth saw this and shook his head slightly. He extended his right hand and lightly pointed at the ancient sword on his back. Suddenly, there was a clear sound of a sword ringing. The ancient sword was unsheathed and swung at the two pillars of fire. Immediately, a sword light appeared in front of the pillars of fire and extinguished them in the blink of an eye. Junior brother Ling, you need to cultivate diligently in the future. A fireball that hasn't even become a monster beast was able to force you into such a dangerous situation. If this were to be seen by others, it would bring shame to our High Heaven sect's name. If you encounter a monster beast, you have to kill it. The white-robed youth had a dignified appearance. He was so perfect that he looked like a person in a painting. However, the words he spoke carried a sense of sharpness and sternness. "Haha, eldest senior brother, how can this junior brother compare to you? You have to know that in the cultivation world, you are a genius with a rare heaven spirit root. Moreover, with the help of honored master, you used the only piece of profound heaven stone in the sect to refine this life artifact, the demon-slaying sword. With senior brother's strength, You can even fight against a Foundation establishment cultivator. When the green-robed cultivator saw that the fireball's attack was neutralized, he couldn't help but laugh at the white-robed youth. There was a trace of envy in his voice. His eldest senior brother was not an ordinary person. He had the heaven spirit root, one of the best cultivation aptitudes in the cultivation world. When he cultivated, his speed of cultivation would make most people die of shame. Moreover, not only was his aptitude extremely high, but that demon-slaying sword. Chapter 51. It was even more extraordinary. In this world, the magic tools used by cultivators could be divided into 3 levels: magic tools, magic treasures, and spirit treasures. Among them, magic tools were of the lowest grade and were suitable for low-level cultivators such as chi condensation and Foundation establishment cultivators. However, their power far exceeded the limits of the secular world. As for magic tools, they were also divided into different grades. For example, low-grade magic tools, mid-grade magic tools, high-grade magic tools, and even top-grade magic tools that were comparable to magic treasures. The other grades were also divided in the same way. Logically speaking, in the immortal cultivation world, the number of magic tools was the highest. This was because lower-level cultivators usually had more magic tools than higher-level cultivators. Another reason was that the materials needed to refine magic tools were far too precious. Furthermore, one had to have a corresponding cultivation level. At the very least, one had to be at the core formation stage before they could start refining magic tools. Think about it, in this world, how many cultivators were able to cultivate to the core formation stage? The materials needed to refine magic treasures were even more precious. Often, a cultivator would only be able to find enough materials to refine one magic treasure in half a year. Thus, the value and rarity of magic treasures could be imagined. However, in this world, there was another way to refine magic treasures. That was to nurture a natal magic tool. What was a natal magic tool? It was a magic tool that was nurtured using one's own blood essence and fused with one's own essence, energy, and spirit. This kind of magic tool could be said to have an inseparable relationship with its owner. If the magic tool was destroyed, its owner would also suffer a great deal of damage. This kind of damage might be difficult to repair in a lifetime. The mystical and powerful aspects of a life origin magic tool made many people rush to nurture their own life origin magic tool. Firstly, the power of a life origin magic tool was often more powerful than a magic tool of the same level. In a battle in the cultivation world, even if it was just a little bit stronger, it would still be a great advantage. Secondly, the key to a life origin magic artifact was to nurture it. Nurture was to use one's own spiritual energy to continuously nourish the magic artifact as well as collect various precious materials to fuse into the magic artifact. This way, the magic artifact could slowly become stronger and increase its own grade. If a low-grade natal immortal treasure was nurtured well, it could transform into a high-grade immortal treasure or even a supreme-grade immortal treasure. If one could find a certain precious material and fuse it, perhaps it could transform into a Dharma treasure in one fell swoop. And if the natal magic tool continued to be nurtured, it could transform into a natal spiritual treasure. It was this kind of limitless possibilities that made many cultivators scramble for this kind of practice of nurturing magic tools. Unfortunately, only a few cultivators were able to truly nurture magic tools. The demon-slaying sword was refined from profound heaven stone and various precious materials. It was then refined into a natal magic tool by the white-clothed youth. The materials used to refine this magic tool were too good. Once it was refined, it was already a top-grade magic tool. As long as he nurtured it carefully, it could definitely become a natal magic tool when he broke through to the core formation stage. My demon-slaying sword has a demon refining formation engraved by Master. After killing spirit beasts and demons, their souls will be swallowed into the sword and refined to increase the power of the demon-slaying sword. The more demons it kills, the stronger the demon-slaying sword will be. Watch me kill this fireball. The white-clothed youth looked at the demon-slaying sword floating in front of him. His eyes revealed a look as if he was looking at the woman he loved. His fingers shot out and pointed at the demon-slaying sword. Buzz. In an instant, a slight tremor could be heard on the sword body. A snow-like sword light burst forth from the sword. Like a white chain, it instantly rolled towards Hunyou's neck. The sword ray was incomparably sharp. From afar, one could feel the cold air emitted from it. As expected of a top-grade natal magic tool, its power was comparable to some low-grade magic tools. Roar. The fire bull's eyes were red. It let out a roar and its nostrils suddenly enlarged. Fart. 2 crimson pillars of fire that were twice as thick as before shot out from his nostrils. They transformed into 2 solid fire serpents in front of him and rushed towards the sword light. Boom. This fire pillar was an innate ability of the fire bull. Its power was not weak at all. It was already close to the realm of a demon beast. It wouldn't take long for it to become a demon beast and its strength would increase greatly. Then, its power would not be any weaker than a cultivator in the late stage of the chi refining stage. The fire pillar it spat out could burn a cultivator in the chi refining stage to ashes. Its power could be said to be quite great. However, when it collided with the swordlight from the monster slaying sword, the swordlight was incomparably sharp. It didn't stop at all as it slashed a path through the pillar of fire. In the end, the swordlight only dimmed slightly. Its direction didn't change as it quickly swept towards the fire bull's neck. Roar. The fire bull went crazy. Its eyes were so red that it was about to bleed. The bull lowered its head and the 2 sharp horns on its head stood up. Its body moved forward and charged towards the sword ray. Boom. The horns were the hardest part of the bull's body. For a mutated beast like the fire bull, it was even harder. When it collided with the sword ray, there was a loud bang. The sword ray was immediately dispersed. However, the fire bull's body was also knocked back by this collision. Its 4 iron hooves drew 4 large marks on the ground. A mere spirit beast wants to struggle in front of my demon-slaying sword. Demons deserve to die. Go! When the white-clothed young man saw that the sword ray was unable to kill the fire bull, his face immediately turned cold. He pointed in front of him again. Buzz! Suddenly, the demon-slaying sword trembled again and burst out a sparkling sword ray. With endless deterrence, it directly used its body to slash at the fire bull. This time, no matter how hard the bull's horns were, they would be cut off. Roar. The fire bull felt the danger. Its iron hooves kept digging into the ground. A thick layer of red light appeared on the bull's horns on its head. It was about to charge forward like last time. Swoosh. At this moment, a pitch-black blade of light broke through the air without warning. With an incredible speed, it instantly slashed at the demon-slaying sword. Bang! The white-clothed young man was obviously not prepared for such an accident. The ancient sword that was originally going to slash at the fireball was bombarded by the terrifying attack power contained in the blade of light. The sword trembled and emitted a soft sound. The ancient sword was blasted dozens of feet away. Who is it? The white-clothed young man's eyes instantly turned cold. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the blade of light. He reached out and grabbed the demon-slaying sword in his hand. He quickly swung the sword at the huge stone not far away. Immediately, countless sparkling and translucent sword lights whizzed toward the stone. Boom, boom, boom. The stone was just an ordinary stone. How could it withstand the power of the demon-slaying sword? It was immediately crushed by the sword rays. Roar. A tyrannical tiger's roar resounded in the valley without any warning. The tiger's roar shook the sky like a thunderclap, causing the entire valley to tremble violently. A pool in the valley exploded on the spot, and a water column soared to the sky, reaching a height of 30 feet. The sword rays that were rushing towards the sky bore the brunt of the impact and were directly shattered. After the stone was shattered, a gigantic black tiger appeared in front of them. This black tiger was incomparably huge, and its body emitted a majestic aura. It was the king of all beasts, and on its forehead, there was a purple king mark that was like a flame, and it seemed to be alive. It looked breathtaking. An invisible pressure swept into the valley like a tidal wave. This black tiger was none other than Di Shitian. He observed from the side for a while. In his heart, he had a general understanding of the situation in the valley. It should be that these two immortal cultivators killed the fireball's child first. That was not enough. They even wanted to kill the fireball. Although the conversation between the two was only a few words, he guessed a lot of things from it. The white-clothed youth was holding a powerful magic weapon. Moreover, this magic weapon could absorb the essence of all kinds of creatures and refine the power of the essence for the demon-slaying sword to absorb. It increased the power of the ancient sword. The matter was very obvious. These two immortal cultivators were obviously out to find those spiritual beasts with spiritual nature. Demon-slaying sword, slay demons. These two words had clearly stated their intentions. Immortal cultivators really have the attitude of killing strange creatures. This fireball can spit out flames. It is a mutant among the spiritual beasts. Since I saw it, I can't let it be killed. If I take it under me, it can increase my strength. Almost in the blink of an eye, Yi Feng had already made up his mind and made a decision in his heart. Therefore, when he saw that the white-clothed youth was going to kill the fireball, his mind moved. Suddenly, a strong demonic aura emerged from his body and formed a demonic mist. Then, it quickly condensed into 10 sharp demonic mist blades. One of them, under his control, bombarded the demon-slaying sword on the spot and blasted it away. Hey, there is actually a spiritual beast here. What is this light blade? Is it its innate ability? The white-clothed youth's surname was Zhong Yunfei. His aptitude for immortal cultivation was top-notch. He was born in a small mountain village. When he was 8 years old, his parents were eaten by a spiritual beast that rushed out of the mountains. Fortunately, the cultivators of the High Heavens sect passed by and saved him. They also killed the spiritual beast. However, that experience caused him to hate demonic beasts. When he stepped onto the path of cultivation, he swore in his heart that as long as he succeeded in his cultivation, he would kill any demonic beast he met. He would kill all the demonic beasts in the world. His hatred for demonic beasts was obvious. Therefore, even the magic weapon in his hand was named Demon-Slaying Sword. Back then, my parents were eaten by a demonic tiger. Now, there is a black tiger here. Fine, today, I, Zhong Yunfei, will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and kill you, this demonic tiger. Zhong Yunfei's eyes were cold. Please recommend me. I have a lot of recommendations and collections. Chapter 52. Senior Apprentice Brother. This black tiger is even more powerful than this fireball. My head is buzzing from its roar. We can't be careless. Just use the demon execution sword technique and kill it in one fell swoop. That junior brother Ling shook his head. Just now, the tiger roar that Sakura let out was too sudden, and he simply didn't have the slightest bit of defense. On the spot, his head was buzzing and his complexion had turned pale. Zhong Yunfei's cultivation had reached the 10th layer of qi refining, while his was only at the 8th layer of qi refining. He was about to break through from the middle stage of qi refining to the late stage of qi refining. How could he resist the tyrannical tiger roar coming from Sakura's mouth? The roar caused his blood to boil and his face to turn pale. Junior Apprentice Brother Ling, don't worry. It's just a demon tiger. It hasn't even become a demon beast yet. With the power of the demon execution sword, no matter how powerful it is, it won't be able to escape from my sword. Zhong Yunfei looked at Di Shitian. He thought back to the time when he saw his parents die under the tiger's jaws. A layer of cold murderous intent appeared on his body. Sword fingers burst out from his right hand, and in a split second, the demon beheading sword soared into the sky. It trembled violently in mid-air, and a crisp sword hum was emitted from the sword body. The sparkling and translucent sword light spurted out several feet long, and within the sword light, there seemed to be a talisman that was about to fly out. It temporarily gave up on the fireball at the side, and transformed into a sparkling and translucent sword that rolled towards Sakura. The demon execution sword was extremely fast. In a flash of white light, the sword had already appeared in front of Di Shitian. Raw. Indra's eyes were cold as he stared at the demon-slaying sword. From this sword, he could feel a sense of danger that came from his soul. It was as though this sword had a restraining effect on him. Although this aura was still very weak, it still caused a deep sense of vigilance to rise in his heart. Destroy it. In an instant, Sakura had already made up his mind. He only saw that the 10 demonic mist blades that were revolving around his body trembled 3 times in a row. 3 pitch-black light blades broke through the air, as if they were real. They respectively appeared at the places where the demon-slaying sword was going to pass through and collided with the ancient sword. Bang bang bang! The demonic mist blade was formed by Di Shitian continuously compressing and condensing his demonic chi. Although it seemed to be formed by formless demonic chi, when it was truly condensed, it was not inferior to a real blade in the slightest. Instead, it was sharper. Under his control, it could be used flexibly. The strength of its attack was definitely not below that of a celestial artifact of a cultivator. 3 blades in a row tore through the air and bombarded the demon-slaying sword. These 3 demon mist blades were not without care. 1 slashed at the center of the ancient sword, 1 blocked the ancient sword's swordlight, and the last one bombarded the ancient sword's hilt. The light blades did indeed blast my demon-slaying sword away the first time. However, did you think I wouldn't be prepared? Break for me. Zhong Yunfei had clearly predicted that Di Shitian would use the demonic mist blade to block his attack. When he saw the 3 light blades bombarding the ancient sword, his body trembled slightly. However, he still let out a soft shout. Buzz! The demon-slaying sword was Zhong Yunfei's natal magic artifact. Its grade was directly in the top tier of magic artifacts. Its power was not inferior in the slightest to a magic artifact refined by a core formation stage cultivator. When the demonic mist blade struck, the sword suddenly burst forth with a layer of sparkling and translucent sword light. An enormous amount of sword chi spewed out from the sword. Every strand was incomparably sharp. When it collided with the demonic mist blade, it actually shattered the 3 light blades on the spot. The sword chi was like a rainbow. It whistled as it swept towards Di Shitian. Roar! Di Shitian's mind trembled. He finally experienced the strength of immortal cultivators. The power of a magic artifact could be so great. It actually disintegrated the demonic mist blade in an instant with sword chi alone. However, although he was shocked, he was not afraid. His eyes became increasingly calm. He let out a low roar. Immediately, he saw the remaining 7 demonic mist blades flying up and down around him. They quickly drew streaks of light in the air. However, they didn't continue to rush towards the beheading demon sword. Instead, in front of Sakura, they collided together at the same time. Like liquid, the 7 demon mist blades actually fused together mysteriously at this moment. Almost in the blink of an eye, a waning moonlight blade that was no less than 5 to 6 meters in length formed in front of him. Slash. After the enormous demonic mist blade formed, it did not stop for even a moment and slashed towards the demon-slaying sword with a loud bang. Bang! The enormous blade formed by the 7 demonic mist blades was powerful. It was not as simple as a simple combination. Around the blade, threads of black chi were emitted. With one slash, a large amount of sword chi was shattered on the spot. When it hit the demon-slaying sword, an enormous amount of demonic chi poured out. The demon-slaying sword was directly thrown back by the slash. The sword's body was constantly trembling. The demon-slaying sword was a natal Dharma artifact. This powerful attack also caused considerable damage to Zhong Yunfei. He let out a muffled groan and a trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. However, his hands did not stop. He quickly formed a sword seal and shouted, "Demon-slaying sword technique, Jade Lotus descends to dust, slaying evil." Wang. Zhong Yunfei formed the sword technique. Immediately, he saw that the demon-slaying sword's body suddenly blazed with sword light. It was like a crystal sun. In this light, the ancient sword that was wrapped in it could no longer be seen. However, between heaven and earth, a vast pressure suddenly appeared. It was like a mountain. In this sparkling sword light, a strange scene appeared. Strands of sword light and sword chi transformed into jade lotuses of various sizes. They looked incomparably holy and gave off a miraculous power that could cleanse one's soul. There were dozens of jade lotuses, But the strange thing was that the monster slaying sword itself had disappeared. After these jade lotus flowers appeared, they quickly arrived in the sky above the valley. The jade lotus flower petals bloomed and floated down one by one, sparkling like snow. However, the jade lotus flowers that had withered petals did not really lose all of their petals. Instead, after a piece fell, a new piece would immediately condense on the jade lotus flower, and in this way, the petals would continuously fall down. In the blink of an eye, the sky above the valley was covered by countless beautiful jade lotus flower petals. It was so overwhelming that it seemed as if it was a strange snowflake. Fart! The lotus flower petals floated down and landed on the fireball. Seeing this, the fireball let out a painful cry. A deep wound appeared on its back. Strands of sword chi continued to wantonly destroy its body. These jade lotus flower petals were actually formed by specially condensed sword chi. They had a strong destructive power. Moreover, the sword chi turned illusory, which greatly increased its lethality. Oh no, could this be the so-called sword technique of the immortal cultivators? It actually has such terrifying power. When Di Shitian saw this scene, his heart suddenly contracted violently. He thought about the disappearance of the demon-slaying sword. With his wisdom, he immediately guessed that this should be the powerful sword technique of the immortal cultivators. Turning illusions into reality, condensing the sword chi and sword light into substantial jade lotus petals. Such a method was rather terrifying. It had the same effect as Di Shitian's demonic mist blade that was condensed from demonic chi. Clang! With a thought, the giant demon mist blade in front of him disintegrated and turned back into 7 demon mist blades. 3 of them instantly flew to the fireball's side and quickly danced around it, shattering the sparkling and translucent petals. However, when these petals were destroyed, they still burst forth with tyrannical sword chi and bombarded the demon mist blades. The light on the blades began to dim as they were worn down. However, the petals seemed to be endless, covering the sky and covering the earth as they continuously sprinkled down. It was likely that the demon mist blades would not be able to hold on for long before they were completely worn down. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The petals were abnormally dense, as if it was snowing heavily. The light on the demon mist blades was being worn down at a speed visible to the naked eye. In almost no time, one of the demon mist blades that enveloped Di Shitian's surroundings was destroyed on the spot by the sword chi that erupted from the petals. This caused a flaw in the defense around him to appear on the spot. The petals followed the trace and entered. Several sparkling and translucent petals quickly fell on Di Shitian's back. Puff puff puff. Amidst the crisp sounds, the edges of the petals were abnormally sharp. They actually easily cut several hideous wounds on Di Shitian's body that had long been strengthened countless times. Furthermore, the petals melted the moment they entered his body, turning into strands of sword chi that began to wantonly destroy his body. What a terrifying sword technique. I can't go on like this. Although I can condense the demon mist blades again, I can't go on like this. They will still be worn down by these strange petals. I'll waste my own demon chi for nothing and won't be able to reverse the current situation. When Di Shitian saw this situation, he knew that if he did not have a way to break this strange sword technique, he was afraid that he would really be buried in this seemingly beautiful sea of flowers. It seems that only by using the tiger roar sound wave can I break this terrifying attack in one go. Whoosh! Di Shitian's mind turned. He already understood that with his current ability, the only thing that could be useful was the tiger roar sound wave, this tyrannical sound wave attack. Immediately, without a trace of hesitation, he fiercely inhaled a breath of air in front of him. His entire huge body once again increased in size at a speed visible to the naked eye, becoming even more burly and tyrannical. The awe-inspiring tigers might swept out like a tide. The king mark on his forehead was really like a purple flame that pulsated, further accentuating his uniqueness. The tiger roar technique quickly circulated in his body. Waves of demon chi quickly rolled and surged towards his throat. The breath that he swallowed fiercely rushed out of his body. Roar! The tyrannical tiger's roar resounded in the valley. This tiger's roar was even more shocking than before. It was as if, in an instant, countless thunderbolts had struck down in the valley, causing the entire valley to shake violently. The surrounding rocks were shaken to pieces on the spot. The ferocious chi wave swept up bursts of fierce wind. Chapter 53. In the sky, a large number of jade lotus petals were forcibly dispersed by this tyrannical tiger roar. At the same time, ripples of pitch-black ripples visible to the naked eye continuously spread out in all directions with Di Shitian as the center. Wherever the sound waves passed, snow-white petals were all shattered by the continuous sound waves. Not even the slightest trace of sword chi was left behind. Boom, boom, boom. The power of the sound waves was all-pervasive. More than half of Di Shitian's demonic chi was poured into it, making it even more powerful. Moreover, the sound waves were endless, wave after wave. In this sea of sound waves, the petals were like rotten wooden rafts. No matter how they struggled, they would still be shattered by the sound waves. This is a good opportunity. Let's take this opportunity to break this strange sword technique. Demonic mist blade, fuse, slash. Di Shitian's body was filled with a dense tyrannical aura. He raised his head and looked at the dozens of jade lotus petals in the sky. He knew that these were the key to breaking the sword technique. Otherwise, even if he could destroy these petals, with them around, he could still create an endless supply of petals. Only by destroying these lotus petals could he truly break this sword technique. Clang! At this very moment, with a single thought, he saw the demonic mist blades fusing together again, condensing into a huge crescent moon blade. Under his control, the demonic mist blade drew a pitch-black blade light in front of him, instantly chopping down on the jade lotus. Bang, bang, bang! Under Di Shitian's full control, the demonic mist blade erupted with its strongest power and cut several lotus petals in half. Then, the sound waves surged and shattered the lotus petals. Explode for me. At this time, Zhong Yunfei's voice suddenly rang out. The jade lotus petals suddenly rushed toward Di Shitian, one after another, dauntlessly advancing. They completely ignored the sound waves and demonic mist blades and madly rushed toward Di Shitian. Not good. Di Shitian's heart sank. A thick layer of demonic chi gushed out from his body and covered his entire body. He quickly controlled the demonic mist blade to destroy the lotus petals one after another. However, it was very difficult to destroy these lotus petals. Moreover, they were rushing toward him. In this short period of time, he could only destroy most of them, but there were still 3 left. He broke through the sound waves obstruction. The lotus petals had already dimmed, but when they got close to him, they suddenly exploded. Suddenly, a large number of lotus petals violently shot out, completely covering Di Shitian's entire body under the attack. Roar! In an instant, boundless pain that pierced his heart, causing Di Shitian to let out an even more tyrannical tiger roar. Of incomparable madness in his eyes, all of his demonic chi poured out of his body. The power of the sound waves instantly more than doubled. Senior brother, I can't hold on any longer. A sharp scream rang out in the valley. The cultivator surnamed Ling's Vajra talisman had already been destroyed by the sound waves. The sound waves blasted his body, causing blood to flow out from his 7 orifices. His internal organs were shattered by the sound waves. He only had time to let out a cry for help before he died under the sound waves. Junior brother Ling, fart. Zhong Yunfei saw his junior brother die under the sound wave attack and his expression changed drastically. However, at this time, a pitch-black tiger claw suddenly pierced through the air and heavily bombarded his chest. A jade pendant on his neck shot out a ray of blue light and shattered the tiger claw. Even so, he spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. The jade lotuses were all destroyed, and the demon-slaying sword suddenly appeared in mid-air. It fell down and landed in front of Zhong Yunfei. Zhong Yunfei looked coldly at Di Shitian. With a flip of his hand, 2 talismans quickly stuck to his body. A gentle breeze appeared beside him, allowing him to fly into the air. Grabbing the demon-slaying sword, he turned and fled into the distance. Of the 2 talismans, one was a Wind Rider talisman, the other was a Divine Travel talisman. When the 2 were combined, it would allow a person to fly quickly in the air. Zhong Yunfei's personality was incomparably decisive. When he saw that his demon-slaying sword technique had been broken, he was severely injured, and he was hit by the tiger claw again. With such injuries, he definitely could not continue fighting. His junior brother had been killed. There was no point in staying here any longer. The only way to have a chance to turn the tables was to preserve his strength. Therefore, when he saw that the situation was hopeless, he made a prompt decision to withdraw and leave. Demon Tiger, just you wait. Sooner or later, I, Zhong Yunfei, will kill you with my demon-slaying sword. My junior brother's death must be avenged. I, Zhong Yunfei, swear that I will kill all demons in the world. Zhong Yunfei's speed was very fast. Di Shitian watched him leave, but did not chase. He still stood majestically in the valley. When he could no longer see the other party, the demon aura that covered his body quickly retracted. Zhong Yunfei, I, Di Shitian, will remember you. Sakra's body went soft and his huge tiger body laid on the ground on the spot. Looking at his body, there were large and small wounds all over his body. The number of wounds was simply a ghastly sight. Zhong Yunfei's strength was too strong, and that sword technique was a powerful attack that he had never seen before. The jade lotus exploded beside him, and countless petals fell on his body, adding countless wounds on the spot. There was also a large amount of sword chi that rushed into his body. If it wasn't for the fact that his body had been strengthened countless times, this attack would have easily shattered his body and cut him into countless pieces. However, he relied on his own willpower to support himself and did not fall. At the critical moment, he used the last of his demon aura to attack with his tiger claw. This was why Zhong Yunfei could not see through him and finally retreated in anger. However, there was no way that this hatred could be resolved. An immortal cultivator is actually so strong. He is far stronger than the few I have encountered before. His cultivation is obviously not higher than mine, but he can injure me to this extent. Di Shitian thought to himself. Although he was surprised, he was not afraid. Instead, it aroused a strong fighting spirit. He also understood that perhaps this was the true genius and expert among the immortal cultivators. He was much stronger than ordinary immortal cultivators. I didn't expect that I would be seriously injured again when I had just recovered. This injury is even more serious than before. The most troublesome thing is that the sword aura that is wantonly destroying my body. He did not regret his actions this time. For him, what was done was done. Since he had decided to do it, there was no room for regret. As a demon in this life, he was destined to stand on the opposite side of the immortal cultivators. There was no room for compromise. Moreover, this time, while killing an immortal cultivator, he could also take in a subordinate and increase the strength of his side. Huanyo was now lying on the ground, gasping for breath. His body was dripping with blood. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. Howl! A high-pitched eagle cry sounded in the sky above his head. A gust of wind blew and a huge vulture descended from the sky. It quickly landed in front of Di Shitian. King, you are injured. Are you okay? Ying Kong saw Di Shitian covered with terrible wounds and showed a trace of worry in his eyes. Unknowingly, Di Shitian had become their backbone. They really treated him as their king. Ying Kong, my injuries are not serious for the time being. Immediately inform Yuan Tian and the others to bring all the clansmen forward and come to meet me. I just need to rest for a while and I will be able to move again. Di Shitian looked at Ying Kong and quickly ordered. Yes, king. Although Ying Kong looked at him worriedly, he still took the order seriously. He immediately rose into the sky and informed Bai Yu and the others. If he wanted to heal, the essence refined from blood was undoubtedly the best kind of power. Previously, he was injured because he ate the flesh of the centipede king. That was why he could quickly heal his injuries in a short time and make great progress in his demonic power. It was obvious that the importance of blood for demon cultivators was self-evident. Thinking of blood, Di Shitian's eyes suddenly fell on the dead body of the cultivator not far away. With his sharp eyes, he naturally saw that there was also a storage bag beside the cultivator. In my previous life, I read a lot of myths and legends. Usually, monsters like to eat humans the most. They treat humans as food. Eating humans as food is better than eating animals. It can increase one's cultivation by a lot. Sakura thought in his mind. All along, he had been reincarnated as a human into a tiger. Although he had long known his identity and situation, it was impossible to have a complete relationship with humans. As the saying goes, humans eat animals and hunt animals. Animals eat humans, and it was the same. It could be considered as a matter of course. If humans can eat animals, why can't animals eat humans? He had understood this long ago. However, the thoughts of his previous life still had a deep impact on him. Therefore, he was still a little repulsed by eating humans. This was also why, when he killed people in the Tiger Hill Mountains, he left the corpses to buy you and the others. A cultivator wants to kill me. Why can't I eat him? In this life, I am a demon. It is natural for me to eat humans. Today, I will eat him. The body of an immortal cultivator must contain an enormous amount of spiritual essence. Di Shitian's eyes became determined. He came to the cultivator's corpse, grabbed the storage bag, and put it aside. He opened his big tiger mouth and took a deep breath. In an instant, the huge tiger mouth produced a strong suction force. It enveloped the cultivator's corpse and directly pulled it into the mouth. The whole person was directly swallowed by him. The moment he swallowed, he felt a little nauseous. However, he still managed to suppress this feeling with his strong willpower. Lying on the ground, he quickly closed his eyes and silently began to operate the tiger roaring technique. The dried-up demon power in his body was slowly recovering. The surrounding power of heaven and earth quickly poured into his body through the meridians and countless pores. As Xiao Chen refined the food he swallowed, a huge amount of heat quickly rose in his body. Please vote, please add, if you have votes, please help me. I am already working hard to update. Chapter 54. What an enormous amount of spiritual essence. Di Shitian could feel the spiritual essence rushing through his body. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. He sighed inwardly. Man is born with a Taoist body and is blessed by the heavens. A cultivator at the 8th realm of Qi refining has such an enormous amount of spiritual essence. If I absorb it, my injuries will be healed. He couldn't help but be surprised. The spiritual essence contained in this cultivator's body was not inferior to the spiritual essence hidden in the giant centipedes he had eaten earlier, as well as the spiritual essence hidden in the flesh of the centipede queen. If he absorbed this spiritual essence, at least his injuries wouldn't be too serious. He didn't think too much about it. He closed his eyes and silently circulated his cultivation technique, slowly circulating the remaining demonic energy in his body through his meridians. Essence Qi rolled in his body and rushed into his meridians. Under the guidance of the demonic energy, it circulated for a few cycles before being refined into strands of demonic energy. This caused the originally exhausted demonic energy to be replenished with every cycle. All the pores on his body opened, and the spirit Qi in the valley surged towards him, quickly entering his body through his pores and meridians. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black Yarrow Qi had already covered the surroundings. It was impossible to see anything in the demonic fog. Di Shitian's powerful digestive system was fully demonstrated at this moment. A whole person was swallowed into his stomach. If someone could see the situation in his stomach, they would clearly see that the cultivator inside was melting at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into strands of spiritual essence. Part of the spiritual essence rose in his body and merged into his internal organs. Every inch of his flesh and blood made his body stronger. In the demonic fog, Di Shitian's countless wounds caused by the sword energy were healing at an astonishing speed under the nourishment of the spiritual essence. The wounds on both sides of his body seemed to have a life of their own. They wriggled on their own and slowly connected together, completely recovering to their original state. The only thing that troubled Di Shitian was the sword Qi that had rushed into his body. It was abnormally stubborn. Moreover, it was like two sworn enemies with the demonic force. When they collided, a powerful destructive force would erupt, wanting to fight to the death with the demonic force. Although Di Shitian personally controlled the demon power to refine the sword chi bit by bit, the pain caused by the refining process was far beyond what an ordinary person could endure. Boom boom boom. As Di Shitian was absorbing the essence energy produced by the refinement of the cultivators, Ying Kong went to notify him and led the way up in the sky. Every so often, the ground would rumble and the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard coming from outside the valley. It sounded as though a large group of wild beasts were running furiously. The tremors shook the earth. Eagle Kong, King is injured, how can you leave? You should stay by King's side and protect him. What if something happens while King is injured? Bai Susu shouted. That's right, Eagle Kong. If King is injured because of this negligence, I, Yuan Tian, will not let you go. Yuan Tian's rough voice rang out. We've reached the valley. Everyone, stay here. The four of us will go in quickly. Bai Yu shouted. With a whoosh, he rushed in from outside the valley. Soon after, the other leaders rushed in as well. Their first reaction after entering was to quickly scan the valley with their eyes. When they saw that there was a place in the valley that was shrouded by a thick black fog, their eyes immediately brightened. They quickly rushed to the front of the black fog. Without saying anything, the four of them directly stood in four directions, tightly guarding the black fog in the middle. Having witnessed Di Shitian's cultivation, they naturally knew that the person in the black fog was their king. All of them opened their eyes wide and scanned their surroundings with gleaming eyes. They didn't let go of even the slightest movement. Of course, Huanyo, who was still lying on the ground in the valley, didn't escape their sight. Huanyo was also severely injured. The wounds on his body weren't any less than Di Shitian's. However, under the coagulation of the blood, the wounds were no longer bleeding. Lying on the ground, Huanyo's eyes revealed a kind of gloomy luster. It was incomparably dim, as if it had lost its life. The only thing that told them that he was still alive was the grief in his eyes. This was already a very human expression. It was obvious that his intelligence and spirituality were not below that of Bai Yu and the other three leaders. Did King get injured because he wanted to save him? Bai Susu looked at Huanyo with a hint of hostility. In her opinion, the reason why the king was injured was entirely because of this fireball. Bai Yu glanced at Huanyo and said, Bai Susu, Huanyo might be on our side. Wolf King had been by Sakra's side since the beginning. Along the way, he naturally knew that for all the spiritual beasts that could be subdued, King spared no effort to bring them under his command. Looking at the current situation, he realized that Huanyo might become their brother. Yes. Ying Kong and Yuan Tian nodded involuntarily when they heard that. Clearly, they agreed with Wolf King's opinion. Whoosh. Under the protection of the four leaders, 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, the demonic fog that hadn't changed all this while started to surge violently. Bai Susu and the others were delighted when they saw that. Under their watchful eyes, the demonic fog only surged for a while before it quickly gathered in the center. It was as if gas had suddenly expanded and then started to contract in the next instant. In the blink of an eye, the demonic mist dissipated completely. Then, a huge body stood in the middle of the demonic mist. It was a black tiger. The black tiger's body was abnormally huge. It was at least twice the size of an ordinary tiger. The tiger's might was awe-inspiring, and a powerful domineering aura was constantly being emitted from the purple king mark on its forehead. It intimidated all living beings. The black tiger was none other than Di Shitian. When he opened his eyes and saw Bai Susu and the others standing guard around him, his heart sank. Bai Yu, Yuan Tian, did you bring the rest of your tribesmen with you? King, the rest of our tribesmen are outside the valley. Only the 4 of us entered the valley to protect you. King, how are your injuries? Bai Susu asked hesitantly. She stared at Di Shitian with widened eyes. My injuries are no longer a problem. I can't stay here any longer. Get out of here and gather the troops. We'll leave this place immediately. Di Shitian's eyes flashed. He didn't know if Zhong Yunfei would call for reinforcements after escaping. The sooner they left, the safer they would be. Bai Yu and the others saw this and left the valley to gather their troops. In an instant, Only Di Shitian and the half-dead Huanyo were left in the valley. There's nothing sadder than a dead heart. When Di Shitian saw the look in the Huanyo's eyes, he understood why the Huanyo was like this. With intelligence, it cared about more things. For example, it cherished and loved its own children more. The Huanyo's little Huanyo had already died under Zhong Yunfei's demon-slaying sword. It also fought a battle with cultivators like Zhong Yunfei and the others. It understood that there was no hope for revenge. As soon as his hope was extinguished, a feeling of sadness and despair arose in his heart. Disregard for life. That was why it had that look in its eyes. Huanyo, I saved you because I saw your talent and wanted to take you under me. Now it seems that what I saved is just a waste. Di Shitian came in front of the Huanyo and looked at it coldly. He said without any trace of politeness, I don't accept waste. If you still want revenge, get up yourself and follow me. I will give you strength. After saying those words, Di Shitian did not say anything else. Without the slightest reluctance, he turned around and walked towards the outside of the valley. His footsteps were rather steady, as if he did not care about Huanyo's life or death, or even whether it would follow him. Just like that, he left the valley. Howl. The gloomy look in the Huanyo's eyes suddenly began to dissipate. Replacing it was a deep hatred and burning expectation. Its eyes began to have the color of hope. With a low roar, the Huanyo struggled to stand up from the ground. The wounds on its body, which had already coagulated, cracked again. Blood flowed out from the wounds. Its forelegs were a little weak because of excessive blood loss. But the Huanyo didn't care. Its eyes stared at the direction Di Shitian left. Looking again at the little Huanyo, which had been shattered into countless pieces by the sword qi behind it, its hatred was even deeper. Step by step, he moved his body and firmly followed the direction of Sakra's departure. There was hatred between humans. In order to take revenge, they could endure all kinds of pain. But among animals, hatred was remembered more deeply. It was more unforgettable. Outside the valley, the migration team began to move again, moving forward at a fast pace. Di Shitian was outside the valley, but when the Huanyo stood up again, there was a trace of approval in his eyes. He believed that as long as the Huanyo stood up, in the future, there would be one more powerful helper by his side. Hatred was often a powerful catalyst in cultivation. It would greatly accelerate the speed of cultivation. Strength. Powerful strength. Di Shitian silently warned himself in his heart. If he didn't have powerful strength, it would be difficult for him to take even a single step in the southern barbaric mountain range. This time, what really made him feel like he had gained something was that when he swallowed that cultivator, he discovered that the blood essence and essence qi in the cultivator's body was really quite enormous. After swallowing him, he had absorbed almost 50% of the enormous power in the body of the 8th level qi refining cultivator. This 50% was also quite enormous. It was equivalent to 50% of the cultivator's cultivation when he was alive. This caused the enormous injuries to his body to be completely healed in a short period of time. This won't do. Right now, I'm only a demon. I don't have the ability to open up a demon manor. I can only extract 50% of the essence qi hidden in the blood food. I can't do anything about the remaining 50% and will have to waste it. If I open up a demon manor and become a demon beast, I'll be able to absorb 70% of the essence qi from the blood food. Chapter 55. For a monster like Di Shitian, if he wanted to absorb blood food, the essence would naturally come quickly and directly. However, if he wanted to completely absorb the power and essence contained in the blood food, with his current ability, it was undoubtedly a fool's dream. It was completely impossible. It was known from the bloodline inheritance that he had obtained. Before being promoted to a monster, if he absorbed blood food to cultivate, he could only absorb 50% of the power in the blood food, which was already very impressive. Of course, 50% was under the best circumstances. For example, Di Shitian could only reach 50% if he consciously absorbed as much as possible. If it were other spirit beasts, such as the centipede queen, they could only absorb about 20% or 30%, but the difference between individuals was different. After transforming into a monster, the best situation was that they could absorb 70% of the essence and power in the blood food. If they went one step further and condensed an inner core, they could really transform into a monster. Then they could absorb 90% of the essence and power in the blood food. Therefore, although they swallowed the cultivator this time, they only absorbed 50% of the essence and power in his body. However, this 50% was already extremely large. Moreover, Di Shitian could clearly feel that after the essence and blood of the cultivator merged with his flesh and blood, it could make his physical body stronger. It seemed to be able to increase his own potential and foundation. Potential was something that could not be seen. It existed in the body, but could not be truly shown. It was like the spiritual root in the body of a cultivator. The quality of the spiritual root represented their respective potential and aptitude for cultivation. Now, Di Shitian found that the essence and blood of a cultivator seemed to be able to improve his own aptitude and potential, and increase his foundation. He had a feeling that such a change should be good, and it might allow him to go further and faster on the road of cultivation. No wonder monsters like to eat people. Di Shitian now began to understand why monsters in ancient myths always liked to capture people to eat. Perhaps this was one of the reasons. His thoughts were slightly absent-minded for a moment and the team had already started moving. Taking a look at the valley again, a crimson flaming ball was walking out of the valley step by step. When it saw Sakura, its gaze became fervent. Di Shitian didn't say much. He turned around and walked into the migration team. Although Huanyo was injured, he followed closely behind the team. Along the way, he waded through mountains and rivers. They passed through a large forest. Along the way, they encountered several dangers, but under Di Shitian's vigilance, they resolved them one by one. In the blink of an eye, they had traveled for another 8 days. During these 8 days, it was worth mentioning that on the 3rd day after Huanyo followed them, Di Shitian finally met him. He took him under his seat. Huanyo's strength could be said to be the strongest among Di Shitian's 5 subordinates. His ability to spit out fire pillars was simply invincible when compared to Bai Yu and the others. Based on strength, Huanyo became the strongest of the 5 leaders. Di Shitian named him Kai Hua. In the valley, Di Shitian had saved him. Now, he had given him hope for revenge. From the moment he walked out of the valley, he was incomparably loyal to Di Shitian. At this moment, Sakura and Ying Kong were standing on top of a tall mountain peak. The mountain peak was tall and steep, at least a few hundred meters high. Standing on top of the mountain peak, a gust of wind blew, causing the king's mark on Sakura's forehead to fluctuate unceasingly. It was vivid and lifelike, and an imposing aura spread out in all directions. The mountain peak was very steep, but for them, it wasn't difficult to climb up. Their gazes weren't on the mountain peak below them. Instead, they raised their eyes and looked ahead. In front of them was a vast and endless mountain range. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of miles long it was. Inside, there were towering mountains and dense forests. With a slight estimate, the size of this mountain range was simply unknown. Compared to Tiger Hill mountain range, it was simply unimaginable. It could be said to be 10 times or 100 times larger. The mountain range was shrouded in a layer of fog. It made people unable to clearly see the scenery of the entire mountain range. As the saying goes, people have appearances, and mountains have appearances. If a person's appearance was strange, then he would definitely be gifted and absolutely not an ordinary person. It was the same for mountains. If a mountain had an unusual aura, then it would definitely not be an ordinary mountain. At this time, there was fog rising in the sky above the mountain range, blocking people's sight. Obviously, this fog was automatically released by the mountain range. Just based on this point, one could clearly guess that this mountain range was not simple. Ying Kong, the southern barbaric mountain range, is in front. Although Di Shitian asked, his tone was quite certain. After walking for so many days, they finally saw traces of the southern barbaric mountain range. It had to be said that in his heart, he let out a huge sigh of relief. They finally arrived safely. King, the southern barbaric mountain range is in front. Compared to our Tiger Hill mountain range, this place is much bigger. In the past, I flew a big circle, but I couldn't fly from one end to the other. Seeing the continuous mountain range, traces of excitement shot out from Ying Kong's eyes. Obviously, his heart was instantly excited. Di Shitian said, "The southern barbaric mountain range is very big. However, being big means that there will definitely be a large amount of spirit beasts and demonic beasts living in the mountain range. It will be very dangerous to rashly enter." Now that they had arrived, they only needed to walk for half a day to arrive in front of the southern barbaric mountain range. However, after all, he was not familiar with the mountain range, so he did not want to rashly enter. That would be extremely dangerous. "Ying Kong, you said in the past that you found a large valley in the southern barbaric mountain range. Can you still find it now?" When he asked this, Di Shitian's tone was quite cautious. This was related to their future development in the mountain range, so they had to be cautious. When Ying Kong heard this, he nodded heavily and said, "King, this subordinate has always remembered the location of the valley. It's very hidden and very big. It can completely accommodate us." He answered without hesitation and was very certain. That year, when he was flying in the sky above the mountain range, there was also fog on the mountain range that blocked his line of sight, causing him to be unable to clearly see the things below from the sky. However, for some unknown reason, a large amount of the fog suddenly dissipated at that time, allowing him to clearly see the scene below. At that time, he discovered the large valley and attentively memorized the location of the valley, thinking that he would return to the valley in the future to take a look. Until now, he still had a deep impression of it. In the sky above the mountain range, he could find the location of the valley with a single glance. It was in a place slightly to the east. "You have the advantage of flying in the sky. Bai Yu and I will first settle down here. You lead your clan to the valley you mentioned and see if you can find the location of the valley. Moreover, you have to properly scout the situation inside the valley." Di Shitian only pondered for a moment before giving out his orders. Stability. What they needed now was stability. With regards to the southern barbaric mountain range, they were still considered outsiders and knew too little about the matters inside the mountain range. It was not advisable to rashly enter. Now, they could only let Ying Kong and the others use their advantage in the sky to scout ahead first. If they could find the valley, they would naturally set off in the direction of the valley. They should settle down in the valley early, then slowly familiarize themselves with everything in the mountain range. Otherwise, they could only use that slightly riskier method. Lead a large group of people first and then decide what to do after entering and surviving at the edge of the mountain range. If that was the case, there would be too many variables. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Di Shitian did not want to make this choice. "Yes, King." Ying Kong spread his wings and flew high into the sky, letting out a high-pitched eagle cry. Immediately, not far away, countless cries echoed. A huge group of eagles flew over from afar and gathered with Ying Kong, then turned and flew towards the southern barbaric mountain range. They were preparing to scout out the path. They also led the rest of the large group to follow in. Looking at the group of eagles gradually disappearing into the distance, Di Shitian's gaze still fell onto the southern barbaric mountain range. The southern barbaric mountain range has a vast area that is enough for me to develop in the early stages. If it's possible, if I'm able to subdue all the forces within the entire mountain range, then I'll even have the strength to fight against the sects of the cultivation world. His gaze was incomparably deep. In his eyes, the southern barbaric mountain range would be his starting point. It was the best place to accumulate strength and increase strength. This place would be an excellent whetstone that would be able to temper the forces beneath him. Sooner or later, there will be a day when I conquer this mountain range. A strong domineering aura arose within his heart, and the natural domineering aura of the King of Beasts was undoubtedly evident. In his heart, this place would not be the end, but a starting point. He stood on the mountain peak for quite a while before decisively turning around and leaping down the mountain. He still had many urgent matters to attend to. He had to cultivate his own cultivation to the peak as soon as possible. After a period of time, when he entered the mountain range, He would help his 5 subordinates by his side embark on the path of demonic cultivation and teach them cultivation techniques. Although what he cultivated was the tiger raw technique that was tailor-made for him, the early stages of demonic cultivation were all the same. 4 beasts, they all had to open up the meridians within their bodies and circulate demonic energy throughout their entire bodies. This process was basically the same, but there would be some differences due to the difference in species. Among them, the one that was truly troublesome might be by Susu. Because she was a reptile, she had no legs, and a single tendon ran through her body to the end. Shitian hadn't personally examined her before, so he didn't know what would be the difference between him and a snake demonic cultivator. However, he believed that the difference wouldn't be too great. He quickly ran down the mountain at an extremely fast speed, causing a fierce gale to swirl around him. Wherever he ran past, the gale would also follow closely behind. Not long after, he arrived at the foot of the mountain. Boom! He came to an abrupt stop, and the gale around him immediately swept up a few apes and threw them out in all directions. Among the various species, apart from the eagle flock, the other 3 species had more or less suffered some casualties during the migration due to various accidents. The victors were eliminated, and the ones left now were the strongest and most robust of the species. Damn, today is the 1st of May. I wish everyone a happy holiday. Chapter 56. King. Seeing Shitian coming down from the mountain, a snow-white wolf, a huge white python, and a golden ape with long golden fur surrounded him at the same time and respectfully said to him, "Let the clansmen hunt nearby. Everyone must eat their fill. Before the sun sets, we must reach the southern barbaric mountain range and enter the mountain range. We've reached our destination." Shitian looked at the spirit of the clansmen. After almost half a month of trekking, as well as various dangers along the way, the physiques of those who could reach this far were many times stronger than before. With just a glance, he could feel the dense wildness and valiance from them. If they were compared to before, they would definitely be able to face twice the number of enemies and still win. Therefore, this migration wasn't without benefits. At least, these clansmen were trained. "King, are we almost at the southern barbaric mountain range?" Hearing this, Susu coiled her body and blinked her big eyes. She asked with curiosity and joy. During this period of time, the southern barbaric mountain range was undoubtedly a direction that supported their will. Now that they were here, they were naturally overjoyed. "Yes. In another half a day's time, we'll reach the outside of the mountain range. Just now, I had Ying Kong lead the group of eagles to scout and find the valley he mentioned before. We'll rest here for a while before setting off. When we reach the mountain range, I believe Ying Kong will already have news." Shitian looked at Susu indifferently. "Susu, you go and prepare as well. The southern barbaric mountain range isn't like our Tiger Hill. We don't know anything about the situation inside, so we must be careful." "Yes." Susu nodded her big head. After a month of continuous hunting and guarding in the vicinity, these things had long since become a tacit understanding. It didn't take long for all the clansmen to finish eating and drinking 2 hours later, and they once again stood up and rushed towards the southern barbaric mountain range. Perhaps it was because they were about to arrive, but their speed this time was much faster. Along the way, all kinds of trees and sceneries were left behind. This place was even more desolate than Tiger Hill. There were no signs of human habitation anywhere. It was a primeval area that was completely preserved and untouched by humans. There were many places that were very dense. However, to them, the mountain forest was like their home. How could it stop them? Instead, he was like a fish in water as he quickly walked forward. Finally, after walking for several hours, the sun in the sky had slowly set in the west. Shitian and his party had already appeared in front of a huge mountain range. Wow, what a huge mountain range. It's even bigger than Tiger Hill. Wolf King raised his head and looked ahead. He couldn't help but open his mouth wide in amazement at the things in front of him. This is the southern barbaric mountain range. Great, we're finally here. Bai Susu also opened her eyes and constantly looked around curiously. Who? Sakura stood at the edge of the mountain range and took a deep breath towards the forest. With this breath, he could clearly feel that this mountain range was indeed very different from the other forests. When he was at Tiger Hill, when he breathed in, he could indeed feel that the air here was countless times better and fresher than in his previous life. Breathing here was incomparably comfortable. However, breathing here wasn't just comfortable. Moreover, as he breathed, faint traces of spirit chi in the air entered his body. Although there wasn't much spirit chi, this kind of situation was enough to thoroughly shock people. No wonder there are so many spirit beasts and monsters in the southern barbaric mountain range. I finally understand. From the air here, Di Shitian finally guessed why the southern barbaric mountain range would become the place where most spirit beasts gathered in the secular world. Not to mention anything else, just the air alone was enough to figure it out. Even when he breathed in naturally, the air that entered his body contained traces of spirit chi. This spirit chi entered his body along with the air. Then, it naturally merged with his body. It could be said that in this kind of environment, even if an ordinary animal lived for a long time, it would continuously absorb the spirit chi in the air every day and accumulate it in its body. As long as it could survive, it wouldn't need more than a few years to give birth to spirituality and become a spirit beast. No matter how stupid they were, the strength of their bodies would be who knew how much stronger than the animals outside. The southern barbaric mountain range was simply blessed by the heavens. Good. In this kind of environment, cultivating will definitely be faster. I'm going to open up my demon palace and cultivate into a monster beast. The days won't be too long. Di Shitian's two tiger eyes emitted traces of sharp light. Comparing this place to Tiger Hill, it was simply the difference between heaven and earth. In cultivation, money, companions, land, and spells were all indispensable. The quality of the cultivation location was a factor that directly affected one's cultivation. Roar. In the sky, a bald eagle with golden feathers on its head let out a resounding eagle cry. After circling a few times in the air, it saw Di Shitian's group outside the mountain range. The light in its eyes immediately brightened and it quickly circled down. King, this subordinate has found the valley. The one who came was Ying Kong. As soon as he landed, he immediately shouted excitedly. Good. When Di Shitian heard this, he couldn't help but let out a ball of light. He looked at Ying Kong and said, Ying Kong, you've done a great service this time. I'll remember this for now and reward you later. Where is the valley? Hurry up and lead the way. The number of animals in their group was not an ordinary large number. Hundreds of thousands of animals gathered outside the mountain forest. If it was a short time, it would be fine, but if it was a long time, it would attract some attention. Entering the mountain range was already an urgent matter. King, this subordinate can't lead the way. There is a thick fog above the mountain range. If we enter the mountain, you won't be able to see us. Ying Kong said hesitantly. Above the mountain range, there was a thick fog all year round. There was no way to see the scene below. Similarly, if one entered the mountain range, it would be difficult for the creatures inside to see the outside. Ying Kong and the others flew in the sky. If they could not see their figures, it would be difficult to accurately determine the direction. When Di Shitian heard this, his eyes revealed a thoughtful look. This was indeed not a small problem. However, he was not an ordinary spirit beast after all. He had the wisdom of a human and the experience of his previous life. In the blink of an eye, a solution appeared in his mind. He looked up at Ying Kong. This is easy. You take your group and fly into the sky first. From here, line up, connect to the valley, and then, from the sky, land in the mountain range. Use the signs to guide the way. As long as there is a general direction, every certain distance, there will be an eagle in front as a sign. We will be able to get a clear direction. Di Shitian's method was like a buoy. The group of eagles lined up in a line, and then according to their position, they landed in the mountain range together. This became a living guiding light. When Ying Kong heard this, his eyes immediately lit up. The more he listened, the more excited he became. King, this subordinate understands. I will arrange it immediately. Eagle Sky flew into the sky and gathered his own group of eagles. They flew into the mountain range and lined up in a row. Then, they flew all the way to the valley. Then, they all landed at the same time. They passed through the thick fog and landed in the mountain range. Go. Let's go in. Di Shitian took the lead and was the first to enter the mountain range. Perhaps it was because the spiritual energy here was much denser than other places. The flowers and trees here were not only beautiful, but also towering ancient trees. They were quite large, and each of them exuded an ancient aura. Every living thing contained a strong life force. Howl. After entering the mountain, Di Shitian's sharp tiger eyes scanned the area. He saw a strong bald eagle standing on a big tree not far ahead. When it saw Di Shitian, it immediately let out a cry to guide the way forward. Then, it rose into the sky again and continued to lead the way. Everyone, follow. Once they entered the mountain range, under the command of Bai Yu and the rest, the group followed in an orderly manner. In front of them, there was a bald eagle every 100 meters in front of them to act as a road sign. After that, they continued to fly forward. So much spiritual energy. While walking forward under the guidance of the group of eagles, Di Shitian breathed in the mountain air and felt the spiritual energy in the air. It was much denser than what he had breathed before. While breathing, he quietly let the demonic power flow in his meridians, refining the spiritual energy in his body. Naturally, the spiritual energy absorbed by simple breathing was not too much. But no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. However, Di Shitian found that, when they entered the mountain range, there seemed to be a faint gaze observing them, as if they were being watched by some kind of creature. He released his demonic awareness and scanned the surroundings, but strangely, he found nothing. Even if there were creatures nearby, they were just some birds and beasts that were stronger than outside. There weren't even many with spirituality. Moreover, they had no intention of approaching them. This was because when Di Shitian entered, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he faintly released some of his aura of the King of Beasts, filling the surroundings. As long as they felt it, they would definitely not rashly attack them. Why does it feel like there is something watching me from the surroundings? Moreover, it should be nearby. Logically speaking, I should be able to find it if I use my demonic awareness to scan. Could it be that I'm mistaken? He used his demonic awareness to scan the surroundings several times, but he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. However, that gaze was neither close nor distant. Although it felt very faint, it truly existed. This caused a trace of worry to appear in Di Shitian's heart. He guessed that perhaps they had already been watched by some power in the mountain range this time. It was no wonder. The southern barbaric mountain range was too mysterious. No one knew what exactly existed in the mountain range. It's going to be removed from the new book list. It has already been a full month since the book was released. Moreover, there are no recommendation spots next week. Therefore, in order to not let this book sink, all brothers, help me and throw your recommendation tickets at this book. Push the myriad demons up the list. After 12 o'clock, everyone work together. Let me feel the support and encouragement of my brothers. Chapter 57. After searching carefully a few times and finding nothing, he could only hide this vague feeling in the bottom of his heart. Moreover, he raised his entire mind completely. His eyes shot out a bright light as he constantly scanned the surroundings, fearing that the slightest accident would happen. It wasn't easy to come to the southern barbarian land. He didn't want to be completely annihilated as soon as he came in. As he walked, he was secretly vigilant. Under the guidance of the live road signs of the group of eagles, he moved forward quickly. The clansmen who followed him all tacitly didn't make too much noise, and only focused on hurrying forward. But behind him, that obscure gaze was still there. In fact, Di Shitian's feeling wasn't wrong. It was just that when he used his demon sense to scan, he only observed the ground and the surroundings. He never thought that the place where his gaze appeared wasn't in the air or the surroundings, but underground. He saw that not far from the migration team, there was a small hole in the ground. From the hole, 2 alert gazes shot out, scanning the huge migration team back and forth. This was why Di Shitian always felt that there was a gaze around him. His current cultivation was still too weak. Even if his demon sense was far stronger than other spiritual beasts because of his reincarnation, after all, his demon sense couldn't go through transformation before he was promoted to a demon beast. What he could scan was only in the sky and the surroundings. As for the underground, with his current demon sense, he couldn't penetrate and scan the situation underground at all. Squeak squeak. In the underground hole, there was a huge rat that was twice the size of an ordinary rat. This huge rat stared at the migration team with its 2 small eyes. Hiding underground, the place it was in was quite hidden. Even if a person was very careful, if they didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to find it. As everyone knew, rats were a race with the most tenacious vitality and extremely strong reproductive ability in this world. Even in the harshest environment, they would have a way to survive. Their numbers were so huge that no one could really count them. Even in the southern barbarian mountain range, there were still traces of them. Looking at the migration team rushing forward quickly, the huge rat quickly jumped into the hole. The huge rat hurriedly burrowed into the hole and quickly waved its claws in the direction of Di Shitian and the others. The speed at which it dug the hole was amazing. As they dug and drilled, the speed at which they moved underground was not slower than the speed of the migration team above. They followed closely behind Di Shitian. The southern barbaric mountain range was very large. The various trees and flowers here were all rather different from the outside. However, Di Shitian didn't have the leisure to look at the scenery. He only brought by Yu and the others and quickly traversed through the mountain forest. If he didn't stop for a moment, he might be in danger if he stayed for a few more minutes when he wasn't familiar with the surroundings. Now, what he hoped for the most was to reach the valley as soon as possible. Howl! A piercing eagle's cry quickly sounded out. The eagle descended from the sky and looked around. The illusion had already turned dark. They had been on the road for a few hours. Day and night alternated and it was already night time. "King, let's rest here for the night and continue our journey tomorrow," Ying Kong said. "Yes, King, the clansmen are very tired now. If we don't rest, we won't be able to make it for long," Bai also agreed. Running at high speed for a few hours in a row was definitely a high-intensity movement for ordinary beasts. The consumption of physical strength was quite large. If it wasn't for the previous training, the running this time would have made them collapse. "Okay, then let's rest here for the night. We have to arrange a night watch tonight. Bai, the 5 of you, take turns to watch in pairs. Tonight, you must not relax at all." Sakra's heart sank slightly as he tried to sense it once again. He discovered that the gaze that he felt earlier was still like a parasite, appearing all around him. This gave him a rather bad feeling. His group was being watched. The key was that he couldn't find the location of the other party. Rustle, rustle. Not far away, in a small hole, the big rat turned its vigilant little eyes. After seeing that Di Shitian and the others had stopped, it turned around and quickly went back into the hole it dug. Following its gaze, one could see a rather shocking scene. Underground, there were intersecting passages that led in all directions. It was like the roads in modern cities. They were everywhere, and it was a shocking sight. In these passages, there were fat rats going back and forth. They were carrying all kinds of things, including pieces of fresh animal meat. In the largest passage, the rats dug out strange stones that were half the size of a fist. This place was like an independent underground world. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, they would never believe it. The big rat quickly shuttled through the passages. Not long after passing through a passage, its eyes suddenly opened up. It was a rather vast space, a hollow cast cave that could accommodate thousands of people. In this cast cave, there were strong rats guarding it. In the middle, there was a throne made of strange wood. On top of it, there was a rat that was as big as a 7 or 8-year-old child. This rat was brown all over, and its long whiskers were like steel needles. It was a terrifying sight to behold. King, I have something to report." The big rat rushed in and quickly came to the front of the rat king, squeaking. "What is it? If it's not important, I'll eat you if you disturb my sleep." The Rat King was obviously sleeping just now. When it was awakened, it opened its eyes, and there was an ominous glint in its eyes. It was obviously in a bad mood. "King, I found out that outsiders have entered the mountain range. I've already grasped their whereabouts. There is a black tiger that is as strong as you, King, and 5 spirit beasts that are about the same as me." When the big rat saw the glint in the Rat King's eyes, it immediately felt cold and its body trembled. It hurriedly told the Rat King everything it had seen. "Outsiders, and there are others whose strength is not inferior to mine." When the Rat King heard this, it was immediately interested. The ominous glint in its eyes continued to flicker. After a while, it said, "Immediately lead a group of rat soldiers to follow them. These outsiders have been rushing since they entered the mountain. They must have a place to go. When they reach their destination, they will start to relax. I'll then lead my rat army to kill them and eat a spirit like me. I'll definitely be able to turn into a monster. Congratulations, King." When the big rat heard this, it hurriedly cried out. Squeak, squeak. This was actually a Rat King that was at the peak of a spirit. It was also a powerhouse that was about to start transforming into a monster. 4 ordinary spirits, although they were born with spiritual intelligence, they did not know how to cultivate. Therefore, it was even more difficult for them to cultivate. Most of them unconsciously absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around them and devoured the power of blood and food in order to increase their strength quickly. When they reached the peak of a spirit, they did not know how to open up a demon mansion. They could only use an even greater power to stimulate it, allowing the power to open up a demon mansion in their body. Therefore, this required a huge amount of external power to act as a catalyst. For example, by devouring a spirit of the same level as themselves, they could use the most ferocious power to break through in one fell swoop by absorbing the huge amount of essence in their body. During the rampage, they would naturally open up a demon mansion in their body. This method was extremely dangerous. If they were not careful, they would be overwhelmed by the surging power in their body and explode on the spot. Therefore, there were only 2 results. One was to successfully open up a demon mansion and naturally transform into a monster. The other was to self-destruct on the spot and shatter into pieces. Complete death. When the big rat received the order, it led a group of rat soldiers and reappeared near Di Shitian and the others. It had been following them closely from underground. Although they had the guidance of the group of eagles, Di Shitian and the others continued to rush forward at the fastest speed. When they arrived at the valley mentioned by Ying Kong, it was already the morning of the 3rd day. "Ying Kong, are you mistaken? This is clearly a mountain. Where is the valley?" When Di Shitian saw the scene in front of him, his heart couldn't help but sink. His tiger eyes burst out with a threatening light as he stared at Ying Kong's eyes. In front of him was not a valley, but a towering mountain. This mountain was a little strange. It was slightly different from other places. There were no flowers, plants, or trees growing on it. It was all bare big rocks, and it was very steep. However, regardless of whether this mountain was steep or not, what was in front of them was definitely not a valley. The difference between a mountain and a valley was not something that Di Shitian could not even distinguish. "King. This subordinate does not dare to lie to King. The valley is behind the mountain." Ying Kong was suppressed by Di Shitian's aura. His 2 legs went soft, and he lay on the ground, but he still said with certainty, "The valley is behind the mountain." Di Shitian was slightly stunned. "Then how do we go in? Do we have to go over this mountain?" This was obviously impossible. He could go over, but the other tribes were just ordinary beasts. They definitely did not have the ability to go over. This was obviously not advisable. Hiss. At this moment, the snakes around Bai Susu started hissing. Hearing this, Bai Susu's eyes lit up. She walked up to Di Shitian and said, "King, I found it. I have found the passage to the valley." Di Shitian did not have the time to bicker with Ying Kong. He quickly asked Bai Susu, "Where is it?" This question concerned whether or not they could enter the valley. Otherwise, they would be blocked out by the mountain, and their efforts would be in vain. It was not worth it at all. Susu said, "King, my tribesmen have just found a narrow crack at the bottom of this mountain. A new week is about to begin. Brothers, give me all your votes. Let's rush to the next week." Chapter 58. There's a crack. Shitian was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly looked at Susu and asked, "Susu, where is the crack? Can we pass through it and reach the valley?" He couldn't help but be concerned. This crack was the only key to entering the valley. If they could pass through it and reach the valley, then the valley would be able to maintain its concealment. Even if they continued to live in the valley and didn't go out, they wouldn't startle the other local creatures in the southern barbaric mountain range. Then, they could quietly accumulate power in the valley and wait until the time came for them to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. "My king, my subordinates only found a crack. They didn't go to the deepest part of the valley before they came back to report. I'm guessing that this must be the passage that leads to the valley." Susu blinked and said with certainty. Of course, there was still a trace of nervousness in her voice. After all, she wasn't completely sure. Perhaps this was just a relatively deep-cast cave. That was why no one could immediately come to a conclusion without confirmation. Millimeter. Shitian pondered for a moment and immediately raised his eyes. His gaze was unusually resolute as he said, "We can't continue to wait here. The longer we stay here, the greater the chance of accidents and danger. Susu, you and I will go to the crack and see if it's the passage that leads to the valley. Kai Hua and the other 4 will be on guard nearby. Wait for us to come back." "Yes, my king." At this moment, Sakura didn't hesitate and didn't waste any more time. He let Susu lead the way in front and rushed towards the place where the slit appeared. At this moment, underground. The large rat that had been following them was now squeaking in front of the Rat King, reporting the scene that it had seen. "Good, you're saying that they've already stopped at the foot of the mountain that doesn't grow anything. It seems that that's their destination. Immediately inform the people to gather the army and prepare to set off at any time. This time, you must capture that black tiger for me. After eating its meat, I can become even stronger. At that time, our rat kingdom will also become even stronger. Sooner or later, the entire mountain range will belong to our rat clan." The Rat King's whiskers trembled incessantly. His eyes shone brightly, filled with lust. When the big rat heard this, it was a little hesitant. It said, "Your Majesty, but I saw a large number of snakes in that group. There were also many eagles flying in the sky." It was no wonder that after seeing the snake and eagle in the migration team, he had been hiding in the cave and did not dare to come out. After all, these 2 things were the nemesis of rodents. "Don't be afraid. Eagles and snakes are nothing. When we depart, this king will open the altar and let all my people shine with the divine light for a while. At that time, there is no need to be afraid of small snakes and eagles. They used to be our nemesis, but later, we will be their nemesis. We will drink their blood and eat their flesh." The Rat King was quite confident. Its intelligence was much stronger than that of ordinary spirit beasts. It directly dug countless tunnels underground, allowing the rat race to reproduce countless descendants, and built an underground kingdom that belonged to the rat race. This was definitely not something that an ordinary rat king could think of or do. Now, even if it was facing its natural nemesis, it was not afraid at all. Instead, it was full of confidence. It was as if it had a magic treasure to deal with it. This was very strange. When the big rat heard that it could bathe in the divine light, its 2 small eyes were so bright that they could be used as night pearls. It kowtowed to the Rat King happily. "Your Majesty, to be able to bathe in the divine light, those small snakes will definitely not be a match for our rat race army. At that time, we will definitely help you kill the black tiger. We will make your Majesty stronger." At this time, it no longer had the timidity from before. It almost jumped up. "Go and prepare." Yes. The rat race in the underground world was moving silently. "Susu, this is the narrow crack you mentioned. It is indeed very hidden." At this moment, Sakura was standing in front of a remote corner at the foot of the mountain. This place was indeed very remote because there were weeds everywhere on the mountain wall. Such weeds were everywhere in the surroundings. They were exactly the same and there was no difference at all. Under such dense weeds, it was indeed quite difficult to find this place. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. The most rare thing was that this was not a real narrow crack. In front of it was a huge rock that sealed it, and there was only a small hole that was the size of a dog's hole. This made it even harder for people to find. Even if they saw it, they would only think that it was a snake hole or something. They would definitely not find out that it was a tunnel. Your Majesty, my tribesmen crawled in through this small hole, and they realized that there's a huge crack behind the stone wall that they can pass through. Susu didn't feel discouraged by the small hole in front of her. She explained the reason. Yes. Sakura used his demon sense to pass through the stone wall and realized that the back was indeed the same as what she said. At the back, there was indeed a rather wide passageway. He said, "This king will break the stone wall and we will go in to explore." After saying that, he reached out his tiger claw and slapped the stone wall in front of him. Bang! The stone wall itself was hollow and not very thick. After suffering this heavy blow that contained demonic power, the stone wall broke open on the spot. Looking inside, one could see that it was pitch black inside, without much light. However, the air was quite circulating. The spiritual energy contained in the air here was a level higher than that of the outside. Although there wasn't much light in the cave, it couldn't block Sakura's line of sight. After a slight glance, he discovered that this cave should be a naturally formed karst cave. Looking at the circulation of air, it shouldn't be sealed. Moreover, there was wind blowing from the other side. It seemed that the other side must lead to the outside. Come, let's go in and take a look. Indra took the lead. He exerted strength in his legs and stomped on the ground, leaping into the cave with his huge tiger body. Whoosh! Susu's slender snake body also darted in and followed behind him. After entering the cave, Shetien did not let down his guard. His eyes were like torches as he scanned every corner of the cave, afraid that he would miss something. Pater! Suddenly, perhaps because the sound of Shetien and the others walking on the ground had alerted them, a snow-white figure suddenly darted out from a corner in front of them. Susu, look! There's a rabbit running ahead. Let's follow it. Seeing the rabbit, Shetien was not surprised. Instead, he was delighted. If there was life here, it meant that this cave was not a dead end. There must be a way out on the other side. When a rabbit was frightened, it would run in the direction it thought to be safe. If they followed it, they would be able to find another way out. With Shetien and the others' speed, it would not be difficult for them to catch the rabbit in front of them. However, in order to find a way out, they purposely followed behind it. After walking for a while, they realized that there was not only one straight path in this cave. Instead, there were many forks in the path ahead. If they went in the wrong direction, it would be very troublesome. Now that the rabbit was leading the way, they could easily walk on the most correct path. Susu understood this as well, so she followed behind them excitedly. Soon, the two of them passed through several forks in the path. Suddenly, the rabbit's silhouette disappeared, and a light appeared in front of them. We're at the entrance of the cave. Shetien was overjoyed. He quickly rushed over, and sure enough, there was an exit on the other side. Standing in front of the cave, he was overjoyed by the sight before him. We're here, we've found it. This must be the valley that Ying Kong was talking about. It's indeed the best place to live. In front of him, the first thing that came into his eyes was a very large grassland. The ground was green and shady, and it was abnormally plump and attractive. On top of it, there were herbivores in groups of 2s and 3s, eating the tender grass happily. There was a small forest by the side. There were many fruit trees. Fruits were hanging on the branches, and they were extremely alluring. In the distance, in the east, there was a waterfall. The clear water fell on the rocks, producing crisp sounds. The thick water vapor nourished the life here. With just a rough look, one could tell that this place could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people, and it was more than enough for them to live a normal life here. There were mountains and rivers, and it was a small world in another world. Good, good, good. The valley is vast and surrounded by mountains on all sides. There are mountains and rivers. Those who can come in, unless they come from the sky, can only come from the passage behind us. The concealment is high enough. This place is simply the best residence prepared for us. Moreover, the spiritual chi in the air here is even denser than outside. This is great. This is really great. The more Sakura looked, the more satisfied he was with the valley in front of him. To be able to find such a place, it could be said that it completely exceeded his expectations. He couldn't be more satisfied. Moreover, they were surrounded by mountains and precipitous cliffs. The only way they could enter was the cave behind them. After entering, they would guard the cave and seal it with rocks from the outside. They would try their best to keep it hidden. That way, they wouldn't be in too much danger for the time being. Congratulations, Your Majesty, for finding such a wonderful place. This valley will become Your Majesty's base in the future. Why don't you give it a name? Bai Susu curled up in a circle as she looked at the scenery before her. This was going to be the place where they would live from now on. Susu, you're right. This valley will belong to us in the future. We just need to give it a name. From now on, we will build our foundation here. We will strengthen our strength. Sooner or later, I will gather a force that can compete with the immortal cultivation sects. P.S. W.N. Yao, I have put my heart into writing this. Every chapter has been carefully planned out so that there won't be any obvious loopholes. Eagles and snakes are the natural enemies of rats. I am not so stupid as to arrange for normal rats to fight against each other's natural enemies despite knowing that they are each other's natural enemies. Writing this way is just to slowly lead to the later chapters. If I didn't even know about this, I wouldn't need anyone to scold me. I would find a way to kill myself with tofu. Naturally, I have my reasons for doing this. As you read on, you will understand. Chapter 59. Looking at the valley and thinking about the future, an unparalleled power rose in his heart. He raised his head and looked at the sky. His gaze was incomparably serious as he said, I hope that in the future, there will be thousands of demons under my command who can truly control their own destinies and who can challenge the immortal cultivators directly. Why don't we call this valley the Myriad Demon Valley? Myriad Demon, Myriad Demon. A true demon had to be a powerhouse who had condensed an inner core. Such a powerhouse could already transform into a human form, and their strength was not inferior to that of a core formation cultivator. Moreover, if the demon's physical body and some of their innate abilities were included, they would be even stronger than cultivators of the same level. It would be quite easy for a demon to fight against 2 or 3 cultivators. If there really were thousands of demons gathered here, then the scene and the force would be enough to challenge the cultivators. Their strength would not be inferior to that of the strongest immortal cultivation sect. Now, this was just a distant thought. However, Sakura firmly believed that in the future, as long as he continued to walk unswervingly, there would be a day sooner or later. At that time, no matter how powerful the force that captured White Tiger Mother was, he would lead thousands of demons and directly destroy them with his strength. He must avenge this great hatred. Myriad Demon Valley, this name is so domineering. Susu believes that my king will make it come true. Hearing this, Bai Susu's eyes lit up again. When she looked at Di Shitian, there was a trace of undetectable infatuation in her eyes. Yes. Di Shitian looked at the valley again, then turned around and walked back. He said, All right, Susu, we have been out for a long time. Now that we have found the passage, let's go back and inform Kai Hua, Bai Yu, and the others to bring their tribes and move in immediately. After settling down, I will officially teach you how to cultivate demons. As he spoke, he walked back. Thank you, my king. When Bai Susu heard that he was going to teach them how to cultivate demons, her whole body trembled with excitement. Ever since they had seen the king's strength, all of them who followed him had been looking forward to the day when they would have the same opportunity. Now that they heard about it, how could they not be excited? She thought to herself, King, When Susu has enough power, I will be able to help you. Although none of them had said anything about it, they all had a deep thirst for power. Every time there was danger, Di Shitian had to deal with it all by himself. All they could do was hide off to the side and watch as their king fought to the death. It wasn't a very pleasant feeling. After all, they were all sentient and intelligent. Since they had submitted to Di Shitian, how could they let their king protect them blindly? They had to be strong enough to share the burden of their king's dangers. Although he had followed the correct path because he was chasing the rabbit, he had carefully memorized the path before he entered. As long as he walked through it once, there was no possibility of going wrong again. Now that he was returning, Di Shitian seemed to have walked this path 1,000 times. He shuttled through the paths with ease. It didn't take long for him to return to the place where he had broken through the stone wall. He darted out of the cave and walked to the place where the wolves were gathered. Kai Hua and the others were patrolling the area carefully, fearing that something unexpected might happen. "King, have you found the passage?" Ying Kong was the most nervous of them all. After all, he was the one who said that there was a valley, and he was the one who brought them here. If there wasn't a passage, everything they had done would have been in vain. "Everyone, hurry up and get ready. We have found the passage, and I have personally found the valley you spoke of. We can't stay here any longer. Let's pass through the cave and enter the valley immediately." The tribes here were already prepared, so when they heard this, they were all overjoyed. The leaders organized their own groups, and under Bai Susu's lead, they came to the tunnel and entered the cave. Susu led the snakes in front, Bai Yu led the wolves in the middle, and the monkeys in the back. Ying Kong flew across the sky. Di Shitian didn't enter. Instead, he stood quietly in front of the passage. He wanted to wait for all the tribes to enter before sealing the cave. This way, the location of the valley would be more concealed. He stood at the foot of the mountain. Di Shitian's eyes kept scanning the surroundings. "What is that thing that is following me? It's still following me even now." For the past few days, the faint gaze behind him didn't decrease. Instead, it increased. It was as if there wasn't just one pair of eyes watching him, but several pairs of eyes. But when he looked seriously, he still didn't find anything. This made him very confused. However, he was already very sure that he had really been targeted by some kind of creature on this trip. It had been following behind him like a worm. It was probably trying to find their weakness. Because of this, his state of mind did not relax for even a moment. No matter what it is, I'll seal the entrance with a big rock after entering the cave. Then, I'll use my demonic energy to fuse the rock with the surrounding walls. Let's see what ability you have to follow me. They weren't afraid of enemies that appeared in the open, but they were afraid of enemies that hid in the dark. They couldn't find any traces of such enemies, and they didn't know when they would attack. It was a constant torment to one's mind, and it was the most exhausting. After all, one couldn't guard against it forever. Squeak, squeak. The big rat that had been monitoring underground saw Di Shitian and his group pass through the cave. Its eyes were filled with shock, and it quickly ran back underground. In the field where the Rat King lived, the big rat panted and told him what it saw. They passed through the cave and entered the mountain. The Rat King's cold light flickered. He said, "Rat King, continue to lead the rat soldiers to monitor the nearby situation and see if you can dig a path. Gather the rat soldiers immediately and prepare to come to the altar to bathe in the divine light." After giving the order, the Rat King jumped down from the throne, walked to a corner behind him, and removed a stone slab. Then, a large hole appeared. When the Rat King saw it, he immediately jumped in. His huge body disappeared in the blink of an eye. It didn't take long for him to arrive at a hollow underground cave that was slightly smaller than the one he lived in. The ground here was flat, and in the middle, there was an octagonal altar that was 3 meters tall. This altar was made of strange ores. The Rat King came to the front of the altar and lay down in front of it. He raised his head and looked at the item at the top of the altar with reverence. It was a pearl that was the size of a pigeon's egg. The pearl was a kind of earthy yellow, and there was a faint light flowing on its surface. It was like water flowing on the surface, and it looked very mysterious. Moreover, the pearl was constantly emitting rays of yellow light that filled the surroundings of the altar. Bathed in the divine light, the Rat King took a few deep breaths in enjoyment. Suddenly, his fur quickly turned earthy yellow, and his eyes were filled with reverence and comfort. It was as if he had received a great benefit. Speaking of this bead, it was rather mysterious. The Rat King had only found it by chance. The Rat King looked at the pearl and thought about the past. He was still an ordinary rat in the southern barbaric mountain range, and he was far from the current Rat King. At that time, he was drilling underground all day looking for food. While he was digging underground, he suddenly dug to the top of this cast cave and opened up a passage. He fell in immediately. This fall was a few meters long. Under normal circumstances, he would have fallen to his death on the spot. He might have even been smashed into meat paste. However, just as he fell, a yellow pearl in this cast cave suddenly emitted a yellow light and shone on him. He fell, but nothing happened at all. It was very strange. What was more amazing was that after being shone on by the divine light, he began to gradually develop spirituality. Moreover, as time passed, his intelligence became much stronger than other spiritual spirit beasts. This was why he was smarter than other spirit beasts. Since then, every time he bathed in the divine light, he would feel that his power would increase a little. This made him even more certain that the yellow pearl was a treasure. After unifying all the rat tribes underground and becoming the Rat King, he built an altar here and placed the pearl on the altar. Every day, he would come in to bathe in the divine light for an hour. Until today, even if he did not know how to cultivate, he still managed to increase his strength to the peak of the demon in just a dozen years. Unfortunately, the divine light could increase his strength, but it seemed to be unable to help him become a demon beast. He could only find a spirit beast and eat it to have a chance of advancing. This was the reason why he valued Di Shitian so much. After eating the black tiger, I can also become a demon beast. The Rat King's eyes flashed with lust. Bang! After all the tribes had entered the cave, Di Shitian found a large stone at the side. He used his demon power to condense a few tiger claws and grabbed the stone to the entrance of the cave. Then, he used his demon power to melt the stone and completely fuse it with the surrounding stone walls. This completely sealed the entrance of the cave. Well, in this way, it will be difficult for people to find this cave. The moment the cave was sealed, Di Shitian finally realized that the gaze that had been following behind him had finally disappeared completely. This made him feel relieved. However, he was not completely optimistic. He faintly guessed that things were not as simple as they seemed on the surface. There must be something else going on. However, he did not think too much about it now. He turned around and quickly shuttled through the cave, rushing to the myriad demon valley. Although he had seen the valley, he did not explore it specifically. He still had to look around carefully. Chapter 60. Shuttling through the forked paths, he was able to find the right path in an instant even if he was faced with several forked paths. With his speed, he arrived at the entrance of the valley in no time. Standing in front of the cave, he looked forward. On the grassland in front of him, the wolf pack, snake pack, monkey pack, and other tribesmen were all playing happily. Looking at the scenery around them, they were very happy. They all knew that this was where they would live in the future. Thinking about it, after almost a month, they finally arrived here. How could they not be happy? King. Seeing Di Shitian appear in front of the cave, Yuan Tian bared his teeth and jumped in front of him. His monkey paws were holding a few bright red round fruits, his eyes filled with joy. King, I have good news to report to you. As he spoke, he raised his paws and spread out the items in his paws, presenting them in front of Di Shitian. Yuan Tian, what good news? Could it be these fruits in your hands? Seeing his excited expression, Di Shitian guessed that the reason for his excitement might be the fruits in his hands. As he asked, he couldn't help but use his demon awareness to investigate the fruits. After this investigation, a deep shock immediately appeared in his eyes. From this mysterious fruit, he could actually feel an incomparably dense spiritual qi emanating from it. This spiritual qi was quite massive. Yuan Tian didn't notice this, he just scratched his head in joy. King, this is it. These are the scarlet fruits that I told you about before. I just found them in the valley. These scarlet fruits are even better than the ones I saw before. If used to brew monkey wine, it will definitely increase the efficacy of the spiritual wine. It turned out that as soon as Yuan Tian entered the valley, some monkeys jumped around and wandered around. They discovered that not only were there all kinds of fruits in the valley, they would not lack food. They even found a few vermilion fruit trees beside the waterfall in the east, which were full of vermilion fruits. The scarlet fruits on these trees contained even more spiritual energy than the ones they saw before. In the past, the scarlet fruits they used to brew wine in the Tiger Hill Mountains were only a few years old. Fruits that were more than 10 years old were at most 100 years old. Now, the fruits here were definitely more than 1,000 years old. This was a 1,000-year-old scarlet fruit. Moreover, in the valley, they easily found a lot of ginseng, ganoderma, and the like. Wine ingredients that were difficult to find outside could be easily found here. Moreover, the medicinal energy they contained was several times, or even dozens of times greater than what they found before. If he were to pick other fruits and use the secret winemaking recipe to brew the spirit wine, the effect of the spirit wine would be even more powerful. What? This is the scarlet fruit. Although he had vaguely guessed something, but when it was confirmed, Sakra's mind couldn't help but fluctuate intensely. It was no wonder, the effect of the monkey wine on cultivation was too great. It could help people save a lot of time. The power contained in the brewed spirit wine was not only pure, but also gentle. It was most suitable for cultivators to absorb. Although he had brought quite a bit of monkey wine from the Monkey Valley, Baiyu and the others were about to cultivate as well. It was necessary to use the monkey wine to supplement their cultivation. No matter how much he had, it wouldn't last long. Along the way, when Di Shitian decided to let Baiyu and the others officially start cultivating, he was also thinking about how to increase their cultivation speed. If he were to cultivate step by step, he did not know how long it would take for him to gather a considerable amount of power. Just as he was having a headache over this, Yuan Tian had brought him good news. When he heard this, his heart couldn't help but tremble. His two tiger eyes shot out a bright light like a torch. The purple king mark on his forehead was constantly pulsating. A strong pressure instantly fell on Yuan Tian. King, with the scarlet fruit, I can start brewing monkey wine again after gathering other fruit ingredients. Yuan Tian felt the pressure around him, but the joy in his eyes didn't diminish. Instead, he knelt down respectfully and said to Di Shitian, "All right, Yuan Tian, the monkey wine can speed up your cultivation speed and increase your strength. This time, Benwang will give you a mission." Sakra secretly suppressed the excitement in his heart at the bottom of his heart. He looked at Yuan Tian with a burning gaze. "King, please give me your orders." Yuan Tian's eyes also shot out a burning light. "I want you to wait until all of us have settled down, then immediately bring your monkey grandsons and start brewing monkey wine. No matter what materials you need, this king can get people to help you find them. Only an endless supply of monkey wine can speed up everyone's cultivation speed." Sakra said solemnly. "King, Yuan Tian will definitely complete the task." When Yuan Tian heard this, he agreed without hesitation, but it takes a long time to brew monkey wine. It takes at least 3 months to brew monkey wine. Wine is different from ordinary things. It needs a fermentation process. It needs to fuse all kinds of fruits, strange flowers, and herbs, and all kinds of spirit essence together. After precipitation, it can finally brew monkey wine. Such a magical spirit wine can't be brewed in a blink of an eye. Di Shitian took a deep breath. Hearing this, his excited mood gradually calmed down. He knew that this may be one of the factors that limited the production of monkey wine. He was afraid that it was impossible to have an endless supply of spirit wine. Even so, you can't give up. Later, you take your people and prepare to brew. I will let Ying Kong and the others cooperate with you." "Yes, King." After talking with Yuan Tian for a while, he also walked down. After entering the valley, He immediately began to let Kai Hua and the other subordinates lead their respective tribes to find a suitable place to live and settle down. Moreover, Yi Feng had specially dug out a huge cave on the southern mountain wall for Yuan Tian to brew wine with his demonic energy. In front of the cave, there was a fruit forest. This way, it was convenient for them to pick fruits and suitable for the survival of the monkeys. Bai Susu, on the other hand, took the snakes and found a pool near the waterfall. She settled the snakes in the pool. Of course, there were also some that scattered into the forest. When they entered the valley, they were no longer required to completely gather together. They could move freely in the valley. The wolves lived on the grassland. The eagles were even simpler. They found caves in the surrounding steep mountains and settled down as nests. The apes planted the saplings of the fruit trees in the valley. Because they were placed in the storage bag, there was not much difference between when they were taken out and when they were placed in the storage bag. After planting them, most of them could survive. Under the nourishment of the spiritual energy in the valley, they believed that they would soon grow tall and big. The myriad demon valley was not small. Even if Di Shitian and the others brought in more than 100,000 creatures, they could still only occupy a small part of the valley. Most of the area was still unknown. Since he had decided to live here, Di Shitian had to grasp everything in the valley. After settling down a little, he asked the tribes to send their people to explore every corner of the valley. He wanted to be able to find out everything in the valley in the shortest time possible. Unknowingly, it was already night. The valley was gradually shrouded by night. In a huge cave that Di Shitian personally opened up on the mountain wall next to the waterfall in the east, Kai Hua, Bai Yu, Ying Kong, Yuan Tian, and Bai Susu, the 5 kings with intelligence, were respectfully surrounding Di Shitian in a circle. There was a look of desire in their eyes when they looked at him. Chihua, although you are gifted with the ability to spit out flames, that is only your innate ability. You have not truly stepped onto the path of demonic cultivation. You just absorb the spiritual energy in the surroundings, the essence of the sun and the moon, and the power contained in the blood to strengthen your own strength. You don't know how to use the power hidden in your body at all. Even if you break through to become a demon, you are just a beast that only knows how to fight by instinct. You can't be regarded as a demon. Looking at the 5 subordinates gathered around him, the first thing Di Shitian said was that they were not qualified to be called demons and did not know how to use the power in their bodies. Indeed, in this world, there were many spirit beasts who ignorantly absorbed the essence of the sun and the moon to increase their strength and strengthen their bodies. Perhaps in the end, they could even become demon beasts by chance. However, their fighting style was not much different from that of ordinary animals. Even if they had great power, they could not use it and did not know how to use it. This was because their intelligence was limited and they could not think about it. Moreover, there was no one to guide them. Therefore, although they had great power and great potential, they were still caught or killed by cultivators. It was like catching wild beasts. The key was how to use the power. Your Majesty, please ask us how to become stronger. Among them, Kai Hua's desire for power was the strongest. He never doubted Di Shitian's words. He immediately knelt on the ground and begged, "Your Majesty, please grant us power." Ying Kong and the others followed suit. They quickly knelt on the ground before Di Shitian. Their expressions were full of respect and desire. Di Shitian nodded and said, "Get up, all of you. I called you here this time to teach you how to cultivate demons. I will teach you how to condense the power in your body and turn it into demon power, a power that can really be used." He cultivated the tiger roar technique, which was the most suitable demon cultivation technique for him. Because the technique completely pointed out every step of the tiger clan's cultivation. It was very clear which meridian to open first and which meridian to open next. However, it might not be suitable for other clans. However, different paths lead to the same goal. The cultivation at the beginning was very simple. It only needed to open the meridian. To teach Kai Hua and the others how to cultivate, he only needed to help them find the right meridian and teach them how to circulate demon power in the meridian. After that, they would slowly open up all the meridians in their bodies. Naturally, they would become a peak spirit monster. Damn, it actually dropped from the weekly classification list. Those with votes, please help to push it up. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.